Hi friends, how are you today? I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. My name is Bailey Sarian and today is Monday. So you know what that means. It's Murder, Mystery, Makeup Monday. But listen, we are officially in the holiday season. Yeah, it comes quick, huh? Halloween is behind us, Thanksgiving is near, and Christmas and everything will be here before you know it. Whew, it happens so fast, huh? It's like boom, 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 boom. A lot of people start getting into like the Christmas spirit a little too early. And I was like, hey, we should I don't know, respect fall's most thankful holiday. So that's why I pulled together a few murder, mystery, and makeup episodes featuring food, football, and family destruction. Yeah. Before we get into today's episode, I do have a word from our sponsor, Simply Safe. You know what I've been into lately? Binging true crime documentaries back to back to back all day. Are you surprised? Well, you shouldn't be. I mean, geez Louise. But it does come at a cost because usually after binging like all this true crime stuff, the books, the documentaries, the podcast, all of it, sometimes I can't sleep at night. If I hear like a little creak outside, I'm like, who's that? And that's why I'm excited to be partnering with Simply Safe. Oh yeah, because listen, Simply Safe is a customizable home security system. Home security is so important in general, no matter who you are, right? And amazing news, Simply Safe has a special holiday offer of 60% off. Oh yes, it's their biggest discount of the year. I personally love Simply Safe because they're not just like your basic security system with 2 random cameras or like just the one camera at your door or something. They've got features. So I know you guys are all lighting up your holiday candles. Smells good, right? But listen, Simply Safe, they offer smoke and CO2 alarm listeners, which works alongside your home's like smoke detectors. So when your detector like senses smoke or dangerous gas and the little beep beep goes off, the smoke CO listener recognizes the sound and triggers the alarm with the Simply Safe monitoring center. Simply Safe also knows this time of year is very busy and sometimes you just need an extra layer of security. That's why I'm excited to add Active Guard outdoor protection to my home security's monitoring plan. With Simply Safe Active Guard, crime can be stopped before it even happens. AI-powered security cameras alert monitoring agents to suspicious individuals approaching your home. They can see and speak to them in real time, trigger alarms and spotlights, and even request like urgent police dispatch, all before a break-in could happen. I mean, there's no other home security system that offers this kind of active protection, both inside and outside the home. Plus, they have affordable security monitoring plans starting around $1 a day with no hidden fees. I mean, it's no wonder Simply Safe has been named Best Home Security Systems by U.S. News and World Report for 5 years in a row and has been recognized for top customer service by Newsweek and USA Today. So now, I can continue binging all of my true crime nonsense and go to bed at night because I know Simply Safe has my back. Plus, I got a gun and a shovel, so try me. Save 60% on your Simply Safe security system. Visit simplysafe.com/Bailey to customize yours. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Now, let's get into today's episode. Listen, I know a lot of you tell me that you fall asleep to my episodes, which I love, so I really put together these compilations for you sleepers in mind. Put me on, let me tell you a story and put you to sleep, or put me on while you're doing your holiday decorating, cleaning, whatever. It's for you. I see you. I appreciate you. So in our first episode is about a man named Paul Dennis Reid. He was known as the fast food killer. He's the case of an aspiring country singer turned mass murderer that left people wondering, like, was he mentally unwell or was he sane pretending to not be well? Like, they really couldn't figure him out. So let's get into our first episode about Paul Dennis Reid, and let's find out what you think. Oh, also disclaimer, today's episode is kind of it's graphic. It's not that graphic. I try not to go into heavy details about like how people were murdered. I just feel like it's gore porn. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But like this one I was like I don't want to. But just a little disclaimer, okay? I think there's a dog mentioned at some point, so I apologize. Okay, so let me give you the intro. Listen. Not many of us think of murder when we hear about fast food restaurants in the 90s, you know? I imagine, obviously, like McDonald's, the play places, and how stinky they were. And I mean, more than likely, when you think like fast food killer, you think like the hamburger was the killer, you know? But no, okay, the hamburger was not the killer. Between February and April 1997, a newly fired fast food restaurant employee went on a rampage in Tennessee, robbing 3 different locations and murdering 7 young and innocent employees who were just trying to frickin' get a paycheck, you know? Now, you might not have heard of Paul Dennis Reid. Dennis Reid sounds like, who is that guy? The BTK killer, but it's not him. His name's Paul Reid. Paul wanted to be a country musician, okay? But instead, he went in the opposite direction, becoming a murderer and making a name for himself in American mass murder history, all in just 60 days, okay? Take a deep breath. This ride is wild. This guy had I don't know. I don't like him. Any products I'm using, I'll make sure to list them down below, but let me now start. Paul Dennis Reid Jr. was born on November 12th, 1957 in Richland Hills, which I guess is a suburb northeast of Fort Worth, Texas. Okay, Texas people know. At the time, the town had around 8,000 residents. It was transformed from a rural farmland to a residential suburb starting in the early 1940s. That's when World War II, or it's around World War II, when weapon manufacturing plants were being built in Fort Worth, and this led to like a major boom in population. So Paul's born, step 1. Now, when he was born, he had a deformed ear, and because of this, he had hearing loss. Paul also had 2 older sisters. Their names were Linda and Janet, and they all lived together with their parents until Paul was about 3 years old. That's when Paul's father and mother divorced. I guess it was because Paul's father was abusive towards his wife. So she was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here, and good for her. But Paul and his sister Janet ended up living with their father, who was said to be abusive, right? And his grandma, Paul's grandma. Now, the other sister, her name was Linda. She ended up staying with their mother. So it was just Paul and Janet together with grandma. You get it? Okay, great. I'm just going over it in my head so I remember. Now, Paul's father, a little sketchy guy, he was a private investigator who repossessed cars. It was said that he was an alcoholic and honestly wasn't around a lot of the time. So it left the grandma to raise Paul and his sister. It was said grandma didn't really know how to discipline the kids. So Paul was like getting into all sorts of trouble from an early age. I'm talking about real trouble, okay? He wasn't even 5 years old when he started stealing the neighbor's mail and clothes off of the clotheslines. He also, little fucker, put tacks in his grandma's soup, okay? Poor freaking grandma over here, just trying to have some soup. Paul put tacks in them, and then, listen, he barricaded his grandma in her room and then set fire to her bed while she was in it. She survived. I don't know how you could still love that child. I'm sorry, that might be mean, but I would be like, yeah, I'm leaving. You just tried to kill me. But like, he wasn't getting disciplined for these actions. You're trying to set grandma on fire, and I don't know. Like, yeah. Okay. Well, he also took grandma's dog, and I'm so sorry, but he beat his grandma's dog to death with a baseball bat. So sad. So sad. Yeah. This kid's evil. Evil from the jump. It was said when Paul was 5 years old, he was hit in the head with a brick. Some say that it was an accident and the brick had fell on his head when he was playing at a construction site. Regardless of how it happened, the brick was one of the first severe head traumas Paul endured. Now, Paul wasn't sent to school until he was about 7 years old, so he got a little bit of a later start. His dad finally was like, okay, go to school. And when he finally got there, he had a really hard time adjusting to it. The school psychologist discovered that Paul had some kind of like a brain dysfunction, like something was going on, okay? And this could explain his impaired judgment and inappropriate behavior that he was showing in school. At 8 years old, Paul was then sent to a Catholic school. It was like an all-boys school in Houston, Texas, which later became a school for neglected kids. Now, at 14, Paul experienced another head injury. He was riding his mini bike and he got into an accident. He fractured his skull. And then he was in the hospital like for some time. And it was like, woo, dodged a bullet with this one. But no, because then he was riding his bike on a different day, whatever. A car hits into him and he flies off his bike, hits his head on the windshield, and I don't even know what happened after that, actually. I hope they got a lawsuit. But another traumatic head injury. This guy, his head is getting fucked up, okay? At another point, it seems Paul's father got really fed up with him, with his behavior and everything that was going on. So he actually tried to put him up for adoption. Yeah, his own dad at 15, 14. So that's when Paul's mother was like, okay, I'll, take him in. He's my son. So she takes him in to live with her and his other sister. But at 16 years old, Paul's mother kicked him out after he attempted to assault her, and also he tried to sexually assault his sister. So not great. It was said that Paul had attempted to do this with his other sister as well. Poor thing. So as you're probably gathering, this guy, not great. Not off to a good start, huh? So after that, Paul was on his own. And by 18, he had a juvenile record, including auto theft, forging checks, and assault. In the early 1980s, Paul got married when he was in his early 20s. Now, I had some questions, but whatever. We don't know much about his wife. I think she probably just disappeared after everything came out, and I don't blame her. But what we do know is that Paul's sister had warned this woman, do not marry him. Don't marry him. Of course, when you're in Love is Blind, season 7. Love is blind, so we tend to ignore any warning signals. Now, he's married, but he's still acting like a damn fool, okay? He got charged with aggravated robbery, where he dodged prison because he was found to be incompetent to stand trial, meaning he wasn't sound of mind. Then again, while he was still married, he stole city equipment to start his own business. He ended up getting caught for this and arrested and was awaiting trial. So, right before his actual trial, there was a bunch of hearings to see if Paul was competent, was he competent to stand trial? And Paul made sure to let them know that he was not sound of mind. He allegedly fell backwards in his chair when he's in court, okay, in front of everybody. He falls backwards on his chair. He shot paper in the air with a rubber band. And then he made a little paper hat. Yeah, a paper hat. And then he put it on his lawyer's head. So he was behaving in a way that would make them think hey, I don't think this guy is right. Now, the thing is, he did these things when the jury was present, but when they weren't in the room, he would act normal. And the judge caught on to this and was like, no, this dude's trying to like play us. So the prosecutor and the judge, they knew what he was doing. They're like, we're not falling for this, Paul, you know. And he ended up being convicted of aggravated robbery and would go on to serve. Technically, he got a 20-year prison sentence. Great. But he only served 7 years because he was released on parole. So it's a shame because I think maybe jail would have been good for him. Knowing what's to come, I think it would have been best if he stayed there. So when he's locked up, that's when Paul's wife divorces him. So Paul goes to prison and he spends some time there. And it was in Texas. He's serving prison. And I guess when he was in there, he started to get really paranoid. He started having delusions that he was being monitored by a secret government organization that he thought was controlling his mind. He called this organization Scientific Technology. Very vague, huh? So Paul later wrote letters to the Texas governor and Washington Post claiming that he was under government surveillance going back to 1985. So people are thinking something obviously isn't right with this guy. He finishes his prison sentence and he gets out. Now he's an adult and, you know, out of prison. Great. He can change his life if he wanted to, but of course not. In 1990, Paul, he got into another car accident and he again hit his head, but this time he got a concussion and he even lost consciousness. So I know we try to play it tough when you get a concussion. We're like, no, I'm fine. But you have to take it seriously, okay? You really do. And that's my TED Talk. Thank you. So Paul's erratic behavior also was getting worse as he was getting older. His father ended up passing away and he attended his funeral. And this was like May of 1997. And to his father's funeral, Paul showed up wearing a lime green shirt, shorts, tennis shoes, which is fine. You know, that's fine if that's what your family member wanted, you know. But to top it all off, he wore a Burger King crown on his head and he kept calling himself King Paul. And he's like, you need to refer to me as King Paul. Obviously, the people who were there were like, why is he doing this? Like, what's he doing? What are you doing? Like, now is not the time for King Paul. But he refused to change. He was like, no, this is who I am. Live with it. I'm King Paul. I wear lime green. As if there wasn't enough going on with Paul, he also had a really bad temper. A short temper, maybe too, is what I should say. But he was very impulsive and just a very angry man. I mean, there were a lot of people who were afraid of him, like family members. In 1994, Paul somehow got a girlfriend. I don't know. But they were living together. She later said that, you know, living with him was like walking on eggshells. You just never knew what you're going to get. But that one night, he just went completely psycho on her. He picked up her cat and threw it across the room. And then, according to the girlfriend, Paul got so angry with her that he like threw her on the couch. He got on top of her and like was holding a pillow over her head, just smothering her with a pillow. And he didn't let go until like that last second where she was like, I'm gonna fucking die, you know? And then he let go. So scary. And this ended their relationship. Linda, his sister, was also afraid of him because he often, growing up, would just threaten to kill her, like all the time. Plus, there were accusations of sexual assault. And then his other sister, Janet, later testified in court against him, saying that he also sexually assaulted her, but that he also threatened her with a knife, you know, trying to make sure she wouldn't say anything, I guess. But people didn't like being around Paul. So you know what Paul did? He's like, you know what? F you guys. I'm going to Nashville to become a country musician. Yeah, it's going to work out for me. It's funny because I couldn't find anything in his upbringing about him like loving country music and playing the guitar and stuff like that. But okay, maybe he's going to learn. I support dreams and passions. So he gets to Nashville and you know what? you want to be famous, that's great, but you still got to like pay the bills. So he has to get a job, and he gets a job working as a dishwasher at Shoney's, which is an American diner. I've never been to Shoney's. Is it good? It's not the point of today's story, but I was like, what's Shoney's? So he gets this job working at Shoney's, and Paul, you know, he's friendly with the other employees, and I guess he had talked to 2 other employees about some ideas he had. So he tells these other employees, like, hey, like, what do you guys think about robbing a fast food restaurant at night when there would be no witnesses? You know, because his $100 a week salary was just not cutting it. So it's not clear what the other employees said, but it was definitely on Paul's mind. And he was like, I don't really need you guys to help me execute this. I'll just do it. So King Paul went and bought a .32 caliber revolver from the pawn shop. And then a few months later, he purchased a .25 caliber automatic handgun. Oh no, he purchased 2 .25 caliber automatic handguns. And then the guy who was selling it to him was like, didn't you just buy a gun? Like, what? Like what? And Paul told the seller, like, yeah, I didn't like how the other one shot. Like, I just want these instead. But he still had all 3 guns. So in February of 1997, during his shift at Shoney's, Paul, I guess, lost his temper over something and threw a dish at a fellow employee, which led to Paul getting fired. Now, he was pissed. Not even pissed. He was raging, okay? And you know what? He was like, I'm going to do something about it. He felt like he had the motivation and the weapons to set the stage for the crimes that he would become known for nationally. I mean, he goes full psycho after this. Now that Paul was fired from his job, he was running low on money. So he drove to Captain D's, which is a fast food restaurant it's like a chain of them in Tennessee. He gets there just before closing, and then he enters through the exit door. And when he does this, he finds like some workers inside and asks them if they were hiring. They told him, like, bro, we're closing, come by the next afternoon. And he's like, okay, bye. It just leaves. So the next morning he comes back, even though they said afternoon, but he comes by the next morning. It's February 16th. He shows up before Captain D is even open. So it's around 8:50 a.m. So he gets there. He's banging on the door because he knows people are inside. And the manager of this Captain D's comes out, and his name's Steve Hampton. Now, we don't know what the conversation was that they have, but what we do know was that Paul somehow convinced Steve to let him into the restaurant. There was later an eyewitness who came forward and said she was driving by when she saw Paul and Steve outside, and Paul was holding like a white paper, like it was a resume or something. Okay, just want to throw that in there. So once he gets inside, Paul secures the door and he pulls out his gun, showing it to Steve. And also there was a morning shift employee there, morning shift, 16-year-old Sarah Jackson. She was there too. And Paul demands that both of them get into the restaurant's walk-in cooler, just holding the gun at them. When he got them in there, he made them lie face down on the floor, where then he just shot them a ton of times, killing both of them for no reason. He didn't even know these people. So with both of them dead, Paul then goes to the cash register and he gets $7,000 from the cash register. It's a lot of money in a register, huh? Then he goes through Steve's wallet and is able to get $600, which sadly was Steve's rent money. An hour later, around 10 a.m., an employee arrived for work but was unable to enter the restaurant because the doors were locked. So he calls a nearby Captain D's, and he was getting no answer. So he called another employee whose father was a police officer. So when they arrived with the assistant manager, they entered the restaurant, you know, and that's when they find Steve and Sarah dead in the cooler. Both were shot with a .32 caliber revolver. Now, this part of the story might seem random. It was for me at first. But then it'll make sense at the end. Okay, so listen. Because on that same afternoon, there was a man out on the Ellington Parkway Highway, and he was collecting cans to recycle. He was about 11 miles from Captain D's. So this man, he's collecting cans, and he comes across an ID for Steve Hampton's children. Now, the can collector thought maybe the owner of the cards had been like robbed or something. So he called police. I need more concealer. So the next day, February 17th, police, they searched up and down the highway where they found Steve's driver's license. They found his credit card, movie rental card, and birth certificate card. All of it was just like thrown about. So that happens. Put a pin in it. We will circle back. 3 days after the Captain D's murders, Paul went to a car dealership and paid $2,000 in cash for a prepaid lease on a car. This car salesman was actually familiar with Paul because Paul had come by previously and was like, hey, I want to buy a car, but he didn't have the money. So now he's showing up and he has $2,000 cash. So the car salesman is like, hey, where did you get this money? Like, didn't you just not have it? Like, I don't get it. How'd you get it so fast? And Paul said like, oh, I've been saving. I'm really good at saving, and I have my dad helping me. Paul, of course, was lying, but the guy, you know, cash is cash, and the guy sold him a car. So now Paul can move about the cabin. Okay. Now, let me tell you, things are dark already, but Paul doubles down on his rampage, and things only get worse from here. So, March 23rd, 1997. It's barely 5 weeks after the Captain D's murders, and Paul, he sat in his car at a McDonald's around like 3 miles northeast of Captain D's. So he waited there until closing time, which was at midnight, and then was just waiting for the employees to like come out of that back exit. So when he sees these two employees come out, they were taking out the garbage. He gets out of his car and like ambushes them. So he forced the two employees at gunpoint back into the restaurant. Now there was a third employee just waiting inside the doors, completely caught off guard, right? And Paul just shoots him. He shoots all 3 of them. Okay, dead. Again, he has like no connection to these people or the restaurant. He's just completely lost it, really. The 3 were 17-year-old Andrea Brown, 27-year-old Ronald Santiago, and 23-year-old Robert Sewell. And sadly, all 3 of them died of their wounds, which is so sad. Like, you're just trying to, again, get a paycheck, and someone comes in and kills you. There was a 4th employee inside. So he was kind of like laying low, trying not to get caught. When Paul sees him, he went to go shoot him, and his gun jammed. So Jose Gonzalez is the employee, notices his gun jammed, and he attempted to fight back. They're having a skerfuffle, and Paul, unfortunately, had a knife on him, so he takes the knife out and stabs Jose 17 times, thinking he's a goner, he's going to be dead, leaves him. So Paul went to the cash registers and the safe, taking in total $3,000, then fled. Now, by some miracle, Jose Gonzalez was able to like get up, even after being stabbed a bunch of times, and call 911. Now, on the dispatch people, they were like, what? what? Like, they could not understand what he was saying. But they sent the dispatcher sent police and paramedics to the restaurant where they found all of the victims and Jose barely alive. They also found other evidence like fibers and stuff that would have to, like, you know, go through a whole process. But they also discovered 6 .25 caliber cartridge casings. So they know this man's weapon. So this kind of, nobody has any leads or ideas like who's doing these murders. They're not making sense. They're just random hits. So then, a month later, April 23rd, 1997, Paul drove to a Baskin Robbins. I know, I was like, not 31 flavors. Leave 31 flavors out of this. And this Baskin Robbins was in Clarksville, Tennessee. He gets there about 10 p.m. When he got there, Paul convinced the 2 employees, Angela Holmes, who was 21 years old, and Michelle Mace, who was 16 years old, to let him inside because they're already closed. They're like, no, sir. Sorry, you have to get your ice cream tomorrow. But Paul somehow was convincing. He's like, no, let me in. Like, I don't know what he told them, but he somehow was able to convince them to let him in. So once he got inside, Paul pulled out his gun once again. He robbed the cash register and the safe. But then, instead of killing like he did the other victims, he forced both Angela and Michelle into his car. You know, one piece of advice I heard many, many moons ago, maybe you remember this show, because it was on TV. And it was like this crime expert guy said, if something like this ever happens to you, the best thing you could do is never go to the second location. If someone's pointing a gun at you and telling you to move, don't go. You just stand there. And if they shoot you, they shoot you. But at least you're not going to get moved to somewhere else where no one can find you or you get tortured or whatever. As I say that out loud, I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of awful. But that's something that's always lived in the back of my head. Like, never go to the second location. Do whatever you can to avoid going to the second location. Hopefully you never have to use this information, but just throwing that out there, I guess. Michelle, one of the employees, her brother would pick her up after her shift at night. So he gets there around like 10:10. So literally, like, this Paul situation happened under 10 minutes. So he gets there and he's waiting outside and he notices that the other coworker, her car is in the parking lot. So he's like, okay, so they must still be working, you know? So he's like waiting. He saw that like the store lights were still on, but he's peeking in and like no one was inside. He, thank God, felt that something was just not right. Something was off. So he dialed 911. When the police arrived, they noticed the cash register was empty and the safe, the top of the safe was removed and the things inside was removed too. What the police found was interesting was that Angela's and Michelle's purses were still in the store and they were untouched, which was odd if this was just a robbery. Now, sadly, literally the next morning, Angela and Michelle's bodies were found at the Dunbar Cave State Natural Area. It's a park. It's a 110-acre park in Clarksville, Tennessee. So this was like 3 miles from the Baskin Robbins. They were found in very gruesome way. Like, they had stab wounds all over their body. And that's as much as I'll say. Now, Paul, he never forgot about what went down at Shoney's, getting fired and all, you know. He hated that manager who fired him. So naturally, he's like, I gotta do something about that guy. So on June 12th, 1997, he went to the home of the manager who fired him. His name was Mitchell Roberts. He just shows up, knocks on the door. Hey, remember me? Yeah, what's going on? What are you doing? But what Mitchell Roberts didn't know was that Paul had a knife on him and a gun. So Paul, in the beginning, kind of was acting like he was interested in getting rehired, not begging for his job back, but, you know, trying to explain like, hey man, like maybe you could still help me out. I don't know. But in reality, according to Paul, he wanted to kidnap Mitchell. Paul noticed in the background that Mitchell's son had a camcorder. Remember, it's like 97, I said, so it's like one of those janky big ones. Maybe it was smaller by then, but I imagine in my head it was bigger. But he was like playing around on it. His son was like recording everything. And when Paul noticed him, he was like, oh shit, change of plan. So he waves to the camcorder and he's like, all right, I'll see you later, and left. Now, Mitchell, he was like, dude, something was up with him. Like, he was acting weird. That was creepy. I'm going to call the cops. So as soon as Paul left, he's like, hello? Yeah, let me tell you, there's a weirdo out here, okay? Now, by this point, like when this went down, police were already staking out like the local area's fast food restaurants. They noticed a pattern was happening and they were anticipating the killer striking again and hopefully catching this person in the act. The police had no idea who was doing all these murder/robberies, but they believed like it had to be the same person. Plus, they learned from Jose Gonzalez, the guy who survived the McDonald's murders, that there was only one perpetrator. So they're looking for one guy. After receiving Mitchell's call, police went to Paul's house to arrest him. They booked him, they took his fingerprints and his photograph, and that's when they would discover that Paul's thumbprint was a perfect match for the one on Steve Hampton's, the Captain D manager, remember Steve Hampton, movie rental card that was found from the recycler. I told you I'd circle back. There was a fingerprint on there and it matched Paul. Boom. This is why you should recycle. So now that they got a photo of Paul, they go to Jose Gonzalez and they're like, hey, is this the guy? And Jose like automatically was like, yes, that is the guy. Then Paul was positively ID'd by 2 other employees that were working at Captain D's restaurant. Remember when Paul went there like that first night and was like, hey, you guys hiring? And they were like, come back later. So those employees were like, yes, that's the guy. And if that wasn't enough, Paul's shoe size matched the footprints that were left behind at the Captain D's scene. And on top of that, police found DNA of the Baskin-Robbins victims on his shoes. Oh, yes. They also matched fibers from Paul's car with those found on the Baskin-Robbins victims on their bodies. Evidence is beautiful, okay? And it was pretty damn clear that they had found their guy. Paul would be charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder. Now, the confusing part was that there would be 3 separate trials because each of these attacks and murders had taken place in separate counties. So you have to go through those counties. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so whatever. It's just what they do. So the first trials would take place in 1999 for the Captain D murders and the Baskin-Robbins murder. And then in 2000, he would be tried for the McDonald's murders. So the evidence, both forensic and eyewitness accounts or testimonies, was overwhelming, you know? When it came to the McDonald's case, Jose Gonzalez, he testified in court identifying Paul as the attacker. Plus went through just every gruesome detail. It was horrific. In the Baskin-Robbins case, the prosecution presented evidence of the victim's DNA found on Paul's shoes. Plus, the knife used in the murders was also consistent with the one Mitchell Roberts identified Paul carrying when he tried to come into his house. Now, Paul, he pleaded not guilty in all 3 cases, but before his trials happened, his defense raised the question of his competence, referencing his brain damage and earlier psychological diagnoses, but it was not allowed to be used as a defense against the charges. So in the first trial for Captain D's murders, Paul was sentenced to death. twice, one for each murder, and to 25 years in prison for aggravated robbery. 8 days before the next trial, which was the Baskin-Robbins case, Paul said that he was not competent to stand trial, that, he's off. So the state had sent in an independent psychiatrist to evaluate Paul. And, I've never had to do that, so I don't know what they ask or what they look for. But they found that he was competent to stand trial. And he's like, shit. So the process went forward, and the jury ended up finding Paul guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder or premeditated murder, 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping, and 1 count of especially aggravated robbery. I know. I was like, what is especially aggravated robbery? Especially? I was hung up on that. So I Googled it. Well, it's a legal term used to describe a more severe form of robbery. That is what I learned. Anywho, he was sentenced to death for that one, yeah. For each of the first-degree murder convictions. So, not looking good for him, huh? I don't know what he wants, though. What, you think you're just gonna murder a bunch of innocent people and, you're gonna be fine? Just go on and live your life? I don't understand. And in the McDonald's case, Paul underwent an extensive pre-trial hearing to once again determine, is he competent to stand trial? Once again, he was found to be competent. He was tried, found guilty, and sentenced to death for 3 counts of premeditated murder, 3 counts of felony murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and 1 count of especially aggravated murder. It's over, Paul. It's done. Good, because honestly, this guy probably would have kept going, right? Paul was scheduled to be executed on April 29th, 2003. Paul, he wrote a letter on April 14th to the governor, plus some other people, saying that he did not intend to pursue any remedies to stop his execution. Essentially, he was accepting it. I was like, okay, cool. But then Paul's sister, remember Janet? Janet turned out to be a lawyer, and good for her, She ended up submitting something called a next friend petition, raising questions about Paul's competence. So the Federal Appeals Court accepted it and ordered a stay of execution on April 28th, just 1 day before he was supposed to be put down. So she's trying to help him out and get people to see that he's just not well. For the next 10 years, Paul's case bounced from one court to another as it underwent numerous competency hearings. This is partly because Paul refused to pursue the post-conviction appeal initiated by his sister and lawyer, which led them to argue, see, he's incompetent. Because if he wasn't, or if he was, then he wouldn't be trying to resist and fight this. I know. I was like, why do they want to save him so bad? If a family member killed a bunch of innocent people, bro, you've got to go. Sorry, but you murdered a bunch of people. I don't know. Is that mean? Good for them, I guess, really. She's fighting for her family from an abusive brother. I was a little, okay, I'm not judging, but I'm like, okay, all right. Then in October, it was 2012, the Supreme Court of Tennessee finally settled the case. They were upholding Paul's death sentences and found that the petitions on Paul's behalf failed to show he was incompetent. Essentially saying, yeah, look, he had some head trauma, okay? But he should be held accountable for what he did. So everyone agrees, except for his sister, that he should be put down. But before a new date could be scheduled for his execution, Paul Reid died on November 1st, 2013. It was 11 days before his 56th birthday. He died at Nashville Hospital from heart failure due to complications from pneumonia and respiratory illness. Bummer. Now, the big question, was he sane or insane? In its 2012 ruling, the Texas Supreme Court referred to Paul Reid as a human conundrum. It was found that Paul was undeniably brain damaged and delusional. And Paul believed that he was constantly being monitored by the government who were trying to control his mind remotely. He insisted that all his trials were mock trials and that his lawyers were actors who were controlled by scientific technology. The court also found that Paul told several mental health professionals over the years that he faked his mental health problems and also any delusions to avoid prosecution. So they're like, uh-oh, what is it? So the court was asking, look, is Paul a mentally ill person who's trying to appear sane, or is he a sane person who's trying to appear mentally ill? During his court trials and appeal hearings, many mental health professionals testified both for the prosecution and the defense. They couldn't make up their damn minds, okay? There was, again, no doubt that he had some mental issues. An MRI and a PET scan that was done in 1998 had found that the left side of Paul's brain was atrophied, or in other words, dysfunctional. A clinical neuropsychologist who interviewed Paul like a ton in 1998 and 1999 determined that Paul's brain damage caused significant mental and behavioral disorders. She testified in court that Paul exhibited psychosis from at least 1978, and then he started having delusions in the mid-1980s. She also reviewed his childhood records, where she discovered that Paul's IQ was in the 80s, which was quite low, and they thought that Paul met the criteria for antisocial personality disorder. But that's not all. A licensed speech and language pathologist evaluated Paul in 1999 and testified that Paul suffered from speech and language problems, which can be a characteristic of people with traumatic brain injuries. Then, because so many people evaluated and none of them could agree, okay, a Columbia University clinical psychologist interviewed Paul for more than 20 hours. This person talked to his mother and his sisters and reviewed the records, or his records. And this psychologist determined that Paul suffered from paranoid schizophrenia for at least 20 years. He determined that Paul's cognitive and behavioral disorder was due to his brain trauma. But throughout those 20 years, Paul has also acted rationally, which is confusing. I think you can be both at the same time, and to them it's so black and white. Like, you can still act rationally, you just have, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't talk about this because I don't fucking know. They're like, look, he's acted rationally throughout the years. Like, before the murders took place, he enrolled in a community college where he scored straight A's in almost all of his classes. And then earlier in 1984, after his court, remember when he made the court hat? Boop. He wrote a letter to the state prosecutor apologizing for his courtroom behavior and asked for a shorter sentence. So they're like, he's like aware of what's going on in his behavior. But again, like, it confused doctors. They couldn't figure out his behavior. It made no sense to them. Mental health professionals who testified as witnesses for the prosecution agreed that Paul's brain was fucked up, okay? But they disagreed that this could cause schizophrenia or lead Paul to commit premeditated murder. Even the experts couldn't agree. I watched this documentary and I wish I could freaking remember the name. Hold on, let me look it up, because if this is something interesting to you, because I find this interesting. The correlation between brain trauma and murderers, because a lot of murderers have brain trauma, more than you think. So I watched this documentary a while back. It's called Crazy, Not Insane. It's on Max. This is not promotion, but it's all about head trauma and murderers. And it's like, oh my God, there's definitely something there. And I think a lot of people avoid the conversation, because if you mention that, that means we'd have to invest money in healthcare and taking care of people when they have brain trauma. And it just means like we have to do more. We have to do more. So a lot of the times people I don't know if they're being paid or what kind of gain they're getting from it, but they will never say that head trauma and like murder links together. They won't admit it, even though there's so much evidence out there. Now, I'm not saying this person should be out in the streets free because it's like, oh, woo, like it's head trauma, so we forgive you. No, like they should be in a jail, but I don't know. I also don't have any answers. So circle back to me when I'm running for governor or something and I'll figure it out. Thanks. So watch that if you're interested in it. Crazy, not insane. I think this guy should have been put down, really, in my opinion. Okay, just letting you know. I don't think he should have been given any special treatment. Paul's death seemed to have provided some relief to his victims' families, just knowing that this monster was no longer on Earth, you know? Jerry Jackson, the father of 16-year-old Sarah, who Paul killed at Captain D's, was happy that Paul was gone and was not going to be hurting anybody else. And for him, it was said that this was closure. The father of 17-year-old Andrea Brown, who Paul murdered at the McDonald's, wished Paul was executed rather than dying of natural causes. I get that. But either way, he said he was glad that Paul was dead. He said Andrea was a great student and had saved just enough money to buy a car, which she did a day before her murder. It's so sad. Because of Paul's murderous spree, after all this happened, fast food restaurants in the Nashville area, started closing earlier. And at night, police would be out like patrolling around these places more often. So, I mean, the question that is asked a lot when it comes to Paul Reid, was he competent to stand trial? Was he sane? Did he plan to commit the murders? Did he feel any remorse? Because he never said sorry. Like, I did this, sorry. He never, nothing. I think it's a bit of both. You know, you could be sane and insane. You have moments, right? He clearly had issues, okay? From birth all the way up to his killings. Like, he was hitting his head so many times, severely traumatized, and it definitely affected his judgment and behavior. But that does not excuse what he did. Nothing Paul said or did after his cold-blooded murders suggested that he felt bad about killing 7 innocent people. And most likely everyone believes that the murders and the robberies would have likely continued had he not been caught, arrested, and locked up. The end. That, my friends, is about the awful fast food killer, which is a stupid name they gave him. But it kind of makes sense because it was all whatever. Paul Reid. He had a rough life and he made it worse. Huh? Can we get an amen? Amen. Thank you so much. I would love to know your thoughts down below if you have any. Honestly, I couldn't imagine going to work like you're 16 or whatever and you're working one of your first jobs, Baskin Robbins or McDonald's or something, and someone freaking kills you. Like, you're just trying. Somebody just comes and freaking kills you. God, that's very upsetting. That's all I can think about. That's sad. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. Make sure to leave any suggestions you have down in the comments section. I'm always looking for just a new story to talk about. I've got a long list going, but I'm always adding to it. Have a good rest of your day. You make good choices. Please be safe out there. And I'll be seeing you guys later. Goodbye. Wow, what a hoot. What a hoot, huh? What a conundrum, right? Paul was awful. He did very terrible things, but there's always that question of why. Was it because of his head trauma? Was it something more sinister within him? You know, there's always the why of it all. But listen, now it's time for some football. Good old American football. Give me that football. Our next episode is about a football star who had everything going for him, whose secretly wild life caught up to him in a very major way. Now listen, again, it's the case of head trauma. Was it the why of it all? And the outcome is quite surprising. This is the story of Aaron Hernandez. So, Halloween, I wanted to do a look. I watched the show Chimp Crazy and Tanya Haddock's. I'm feeling inspired by her look. If you're not familiar with the show, I would say watch Chimp Crazy. It's on HBO or Max, whatever the frick their name is. And Tanya has a very interesting look. Again, if you're not familiar, I'm going to be painting myself like orange. Okay, just go with it while I talk about today's story. It's Halloween. Leave the judgment behind. Thank you so much. If you're curious to know what products I'm using, I'll link them down below, but we'll see how this goes. It's been a while since I've done like a Halloween look. So, have you ever heard the saying, not everything that glitters is gold? Well, let me tell you, there's no truer example of that than the story of Aaron Hernandez. Now, this man who seemed to like have it all, he had it all. Booming NFL career, loving fiance, beautiful daughter, a lifestyle that most people would like dream of, plus great teeth. But behind like all that glitz, all of that, there was a darkness so deep and tangled that even those closest to him could not see it coming. So buckle up, baby, because today we are diving headfirst into one of the most shocking and downright twisted stories in NFL history. Oh yes, that was a good intro. Aaron Hernandez went from the top of the sports world to frickin' rock bottom, and the fall was violent, it was fast, and it was full of secrets. Aaron Hernandez, his brother, actually wrote a book about his brother Aaron. So I read his brother's book, and that's where like I got a lot of information from it. Gave a lot of context too. But let me just get into it. So Aaron Michael Hernandez, he was born in Bristol, Connecticut on November 6, 1989. He was the second son to his parents, Dennis Hernandez and Terry Valentine Hernandez. I know, Valentine, cute last name. But according to Aaron, he said, look, growing up in the home, there was like constant fighting going on. It was toxic. Aaron's dad, his name was Dennis. He actually had like a nickname in the city of Bristol. Everyone kind of called him the King because Dennis, he was regarded as like a local success story. It was said, Dennis, that he grew up as a, quote, like scrappy kid who grew up in a family with Puerto Rican roots. And as he was growing up, he had a lot of run-ins with the law, but he was able to like pull himself together as a teenager and become a Bristol Central High football star and had a football scholarship to the University of Connecticut. Thank you. And again, this was Aaron's dad. But you know, like those dreams didn't last forever. When he was done playing football, he didn't go like pro or anything. And he ended up becoming a high school janitor. And Aaron's mom, she was working as a school secretary, which isn't bad. It's just, you know, he wanted more. So usually when a parent has big dreams, what happens? They push that onto their children. And it definitely seemed like this was the case. It was said that both of the parents, they were pretty rough in like their own ways. And both of them would be arrested and involved in crime during their lives. When Aaron was 3 years old, his father, Dennis, he was arrested and charged with like trying to buy cocaine from an undercover cop. He had a bit of a drug problem. Not great, right? And then when Aaron was 8, his father, he got into a fight with one of the school football coaches and ended up punching him in the face, which led to his arrest. He was one of those parents, you know what I'm saying? And then when Aaron was 11, his mom got arrested for being part of an underground sports gambling bookie operation that was working out of the family home. So what I'm getting at is there was a lot going on. It was said that Aaron's father was pretty hardcore. Like, he would often beat and belittle the kids, like nothing they did was good enough. And if their father was drinking, it seemed to be worse. But usually he would tell the kids, like, you're not working hard enough. They were just never doing, like, the right thing, you know? And as a kid, what I read in the book was that, like, they still love their dad. I mean, as a kid, you just want your parents' approval. So it's like they were just going above and beyond trying to prove to their father that they were good enough. It was said that, like, Aaron and his brother, they lived in constant fear of, like, their father's beatings, which were so bad that, like, at times they would threaten their dad that they were going to call the police, and in hopes that he would stop. But the dad would be like, go ahead, call them, and, like, hand the kids the phone, like, go ahead, do it. And then he would tell the kids, like, if you call the police, I'm just going to beat you even harder, so go ahead. You know, and as a child, I'm sure that's not ideal. You know? Sucks. He just seemed really mean. Aaron would say that he remembered his mother, like, throwing his father out of the house on multiple occasions, but she would always end up, like, letting him back in. Aaron's family, they would all get together from time to time, you know, and that's when he saw that his cousins were into cheerleading. And to him, it seemed really fun. And his cousins were, like, really good at it. They're doing flips. They're cheerleading, you know, and Aaron said that he wanted to be a cheerleader because his cousins were good at it, and he wanted to do it too. So I guess he told his parents that he wanted to do cheerleading. And let me tell you, that did not go well. Aaron's dad was just straight up, like, homophobic. He would call Aaron and his brother, like, just awful slurs, the bad ones, all the time. And even in the book, it was saying that Aaron's dad used to say that the way Aaron, like, stood or, like, had his hands on his hips and stuff, he would call him, he would just say, like, don't stand like that. You look like a F word, you know? And it was a lot of that. So him wanting to be a cheerleader was just, oh, hell no. Okay, he was not going to be a cheerleader, and it was not acceptable to his father. So instead, you know, their dad really focused on putting the kids into sports, you know, and they would play sports any chance they could. So they would play basketball, they would play football, and it seemed like their father just wanted, like, the boys to focus on football and be famous football players, really, you know, and just be, like, the best at it. Well, of course, Aaron played football, you know, and he was really good at it. He was really good at it. He attended Bristol Central High School, where he was named High School All-American after catching 24 touchdowns. When he was in elementary school and middle school, it was said that Aaron was, like, really skinny and just kind of, like, lanky, you know, but then when he reached high school, he went through, like, a growth spurt where he reached 6'2", and he got all muscular, and, like, he was practicing harder at football than anyone else. And he would tell his brother, like, dude, I'm going to be the best. I'm going to be the best. And he was, like, just determined to be a star. It's such a shame because, like, I don't really understand the football lingo a lot. But based off what I was reading, I mean, like, he was really, really good and really something special. It's just a shame. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So he's determined to be a star. And things were, like, really working out for him. During his junior year, he had captured the attention of college recruiters across the country. He was getting calls from places like the University of Michigan, Notre Dame, Boston College, and the University of Florida. So it's like, dang, he's got options. Okay, look, this is a side note because, like, I left it out of the script. Technically, like, he was supposed to go to the University of Connecticut and kind of, like, made a deal with the football coach there that he was going to go there. But then after realizing he had other options, he decided he wanted to go somewhere else. And there was some kind of, like, drama with that. But I'm breezing past it because it doesn't matter. Just saying that because if you're an Aaron Hernandez fan, you're probably like, why aren't you mentioning that? There you go. Okay, great. So then Aaron's junior year of high school, 2006, Aaron's father, Dennis, he would go in he was having stomach problems, so he went in for a hernia surgery. You know, it's a routine surgery, removing the hernia, whatever. After the surgery, like, he's healing fine, and then all of a sudden, just like things started to go downhill, and they went downhill quick. And Dennis, his dad, ended up passing away at the age of 49. It said he got toxic shock, and then he died. So again, it was just supposed to be a simple surgery, right? And like, none of it made sense. And this was a huge loss to the family. And this is really when things just start going downhill. After his father's death, it was said that Aaron started dabbling with drugs. A friend and like a teammate of his name was also Dennis, he recalled like smoking a lot of weed with Aaron before school, before practice, and even like after football games and stuff. I guess they were high like all the time in high school. Then things got messy. So some of like Aaron's relatives, they also lived in Bristol, and they were close. He had one cousin, her name was Tanya, and she was about like 14 years older than he was. So she was like an older sister to him, an older sister he never had, someone he could totally trust. But after his father died, he learned that his mother was having a romantic relationship with Tanya's husband. So obviously, major shock to Tanya, right? What? Huh? Yes. And also to Aaron. When Aaron found out about his mom having the relationship, whatever, it made him and Tanya grow closer in their relationship. And also Aaron like really started to despise his mom, like really did not like her. So Tanya would end up divorcing her husband, and it wouldn't take long for Tanya's ex-husband to like move in with Aaron's mom. So it was just like, it was a lot, right? Like, your dad just died, now your mom's with your cousin's husband, like, it was just a lot for him. So Aaron would spend a lot of his time at his cousin Tanya's house after learning about the affair. Like, he didn't want to be home anymore. And her house was across the street from the fields where Aaron used to play youth football. So it was just a second home to him. It was said at Tanya's house, that's where he like first really got introduced to weed and to like a lot of questionable people. It was said this is where, at Tanya's house, it's where he acquired his streetwise mentality. So Aaron's transition from high school to the University of Florida was in January of 2007. It was marked by both anticipation and controversy. He was pushed by the Florida Gators head coach, Urban Meyer, who was like keen on recruiting young talent. And he wanted Aaron to graduate high school early to join the college football ranks. Now, Aaron, again, was really great athletically, but he wasn't like fully academically ready for college. It was said that he scored a 420 on his SAT, which was below the minimum requirement at Florida, where most of the freshmen scored 600 or above. So technically, he shouldn't have been allowed in, but it didn't matter though, because he was great on the field, and the coach was like, he wanted him, right? And it's like, oh, he can focus on reading and writing in college. Like, it's fine. Just ignore it. Everything's fine. So they just really ignored his low scores. So at just 17, Aaron's encounter with adulthood and its freedoms was off to a rocky start. There was an early incident at a Gainesville bar called The Swamp, and here's what happened. So that night, Aaron goes out to this bar with another college football star and teammate, Tim Tebow. First of all, Aaron was just 17 years old, so he shouldn't even have been at the bar drinking in the first place. But it said that like college football players kind of get treated like rock stars there. So the whole age thing didn't matter. So they go out. Aaron has like a couple of drinks at the bar and then was given the bill because you gotta pay, right? Well, Aaron allegedly didn't think such a big football star like himself should have to pay for the drinks. So an argument happened. And we don't really know what was said, but what we do know happened was that Aaron ended up punching the bar manager in the head. And the manager, he like suffered from a ruptured eardrum. Now, Aaron could have easily been charged with a felony over this. But again, the college football stars, they get treated differently. So Aaron like called his coach in the middle of the night, gave him the details, and the Gators' unofficial defense lawyer intervened. Soon afterwards, the bar manager told the police that he was going to request that the charges be dropped because he had been contacted by legal staff and coaches with the university, and that they were just going to work on some kind of agreement. I know, must be nice. Well, is it? No. There's no consequences with these boys. In the end, Aaron like never faced any charges. But this was like red flag number 1. Aaron's teammates in Florida considered Aaron to be like a big-hearted clown. They gave him the nickname Chico, and he like embraced it. His teammates would say that he always tried to be the life of the party, and like people either loved him or they just couldn't stand the guy. During his time at Florida, he was recognized as one of the top players in the nation. Like he was a key player on the 2008 BCS National Championship team. That's like speaking a different language. I don't know what that means, but like, yes, he was a very talented player. But even with his fun personality, Aaron was facing some serious issues. He wasn't doing great in his classes, if he was even going. And he even got like mixed up in a scary situation involving a shooting in Gainesville that left 2 wounded. I tried to find more information about this because I was like, what? He wasn't part of this shooting. It was more of him being at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's like all the information I could find. I think after the fact, people now think he probably was involved in some kind of way with whatever went down. Yeah. I don't even know if it was worth mentioning, but like I mentioned it. So, because I don't know what the situation was. So despite all these problems, Aaron was still an amazing football player. He ended up receiving the John Mackey Award as the nation's best college tight end for his junior season at Florida in 2009, which is pretty huge. I feel so dumb. This is not my world. But I guess I looked it up, and the John Mackey Award is like presented annually to the most outstanding college tight end in the United States. So that's very impressive, right? So Aaron, he had his eyes set on joining the NFL, which, you know, the real deal. But there were some more problems. Aaron was failing drug tests while he was at the University of Florida. And scouts, I learned that football scouts, they do some serious digging. They hire private investigators to look into everyone's backgrounds to know like what they're investing in, which is good. But at the same time, how come they always overlook domestic abuse? I don't know. But so scouts were looking into Aaron because he's amazing, right? But they didn't really like him, and they were describing him as like a social misfit who had like a serious weed habit. So on top of that, when they were looking into, you know, his past, there were concerns about his possible ties to like some kind of criminal behavior in his hometown of Bristol. He didn't technically have any charges on his record, but like there was some question. He just they weren't sure. So like a lot of recruits didn't want to touch him. But things were going to be all right for him because in 2010, Aaron was drafted by the New England Patriots in the 4th round of the NFL draft. Now this was major, right? Huge. Could you imagine? It's major. So this was like his chance to like get things together, right? He's playing with the big boys now. And he showed up. During his rookie year, Aaron had scored 6 touchdowns on 563 receiving yards. Question mark? I don't know what that means. Alongside quarterback Tom Brady. Maybe you know what that means. Okay, so he's doing great. And in his 2nd season, he helped the Patriots, you know, get all the way up to the Super Bowl. They ended up losing to the New York Giants 21-17, but I'm sure like this was quite the rush for him. I'm sure his dad, as mean as he was, I'm sure his dad would have been very proud. Or not. I'm not sure. But either way. So as his fame and workload were growing, Aaron decided to hire like 2 friends to work as like his assistants. Now, one of them, his name was Alexander Bradley, who technically was a drug dealer that Aaron met back in college. And I guess he was now working as his personal assistant. And it seemed like mainly his weed supplier. And Alexander, like his job wasn't, I guess, just about getting drugs. He was also there to calm Aaron down whenever he would get angry or paranoid, just do things for Aaron. So at one point, Aaron had asked Alexander to buy him a $375 silver revolver for him. I don't know. He just wanted some guns. And the Patriots, the team, they kind of like turned a blind eye to Aaron's shenanigans. Like they knew he was up to no good. And they knew that he was smoking weed, allegedly. But again, he was such a good player and he was such an asset to the team. So they were just kind of like, you know, just looking the other way. And because Aaron did so well on his like rookie year or whatever, the Patriots, the team, they went ahead and signed Aaron to a 5-year, $40 million contract extension with the Patriots. And this happened in August of 2012. Now, at this time, Aaron is 23 years old. I don't know about you, but I could not imagine being 23 years old with a $40 million contract. I'm sure if you don't have the right people around, it could easily destroy you, right? Be stupid with the money, buying stupid crap, just being stupid. It was said that Aaron often carried a gun around, and some people that were around him thought that he was like a respectful, nice guy, especially for being a celebrity athlete. But they would say like the friends that he was hanging around were just a bad influence. One friend who hung around like his circle said that Aaron was very gullible and he was willing to just do whatever to like prove that he was badass or something. It was like he didn't realize that he was getting himself into a lot of trouble by hanging out with the wrong people. And a lot of people said that he was just a follower. So the Patriots teammates described Aaron as an attention seeker who at times seemed unhinged. They would go on to say that he would have like these major mood swings where he would be like the most hyper masculine, aggressive individual in the room and like was ready to fight anybody, you know, during like fits of rage. And then there would be other times where he would be like the most sensitive person in the room and he would be talking about like cuddling with his mom, or he would go up to other players asking like if he was good enough to play. He just seemed deeply insecure. I guess there would be beef at times with their legendary team leader, Tom Brady, who would become enraged by Aaron's erratic behavior. It's like 1 minute Aaron would be like childlike, laughing and disruptive. And then the next, he would kind of storm off in a fit of rage. And then there was Aaron's lover, Shayna Jenkins. The two of them, they met when they were kids growing up in the same neighborhood in Bristol. They attended the same elementary and high school, which meant that they knew each other just from a very young age. Their families were familiar with each other, and they, you know, were childhood friends for like many years. As they grew older, their friendship eventually turned into a romantic relationship in high school. They broke up for a little bit when Aaron went to the University of Florida, but they still like stayed in touch. And then when he went into the NFL, I guess that's when they like decided to pick back up their relationship. Shayna eventually moved in with Aaron after he started playing for the New England Patriots, and then the couple ended up getting engaged in 2012. On November 6, 2012, Shayna gave birth to their daughter. You would hope this would make him grow up a little bit, you know, grow up, you have a family now, but nay, of course not. In July of 2012, Aaron was at the Cure Lounge one evening. He's partying and he was hanging out with his friend Alexander. It was said at around 12:30 a.m. inside of the club, a guy named Daniel Diablo bumped into Aaron, causing him to like spill his drink on himself. That was it. Okay. And I guess that was enough to set Aaron off. Alexander said that Aaron was getting all riled up and that it was best if they just left the club. So the two of them leave the club and they're like outside, and Aaron is fuming. Like he can't freaking let it go. Then Aaron noticed that that guy Daniel who ran into him and his friend Safiro were leaving the club. So I guess Aaron like turns to Alexander and he tells him like, let's go. Let's like follow them. So it's around 2:30 a.m. Aaron and his friend Alexander, they hop into their car. It's a silver SUV, and they hit the road and they catch up to the car that Daniel and Safiro were in, and they like pull up next to them. It's like at a red light. Witnesses later testified that someone in Aaron's car had shouted at the other men, saying like, "What's up now?" Just like shouting at them and then screaming like some racist stuff before firing 5 shots into the vehicle, which ended up killing both of the men. So the SUV with Aaron and his friend, they take off, and they end up taking the SUV to Aaron's cousin's garage, Tanya, to keep it hidden for a while because they just freaking killed someone. So they're like, we need to hide the car. So naturally, police come out to the scene and investigate, figure out what the frick happened. And they were looking into surveillance footage from the club that night to determine like who killed these men, right? And on the footage, they actually saw Aaron Hernandez on the footage. And at first, like the police even said they just thought like, oh, what a coincidence. You know, like he's a big football star and he was at the club. That's funny. Like they didn't think he was a part of it. The only thing they had to go off of, the police, was like finding that SUV that was involved in the attack. But they were having no luck locating the vehicle. So the police, they said that they had no leads. They had no leads because both Daniel and Safiro had no criminal history. They had no enemies. They worked cleaning buildings at night and were just like good, honest people. And the killing made no sense. Now, the police, again, they were not looking into Aaron at this time because technically Aaron did not have a criminal record himself. Like, yes, he had those involvements earlier, but there was never any like police reports made. So there was nothing on his record. And again, the police are like, he's a big football star. Like, what would he have to do with this crime? You know, the case kind of goes cold because they don't even know who they're looking for. It was really sad for the family. Like these men that got killed. Oh, they just seemed like it was just like so sad. Like they just seemed like really good people, and they got killed for literally no freaking reason. And the families, you know, they were preparing to bury Daniel and Safiro side by side, like in a Boston cemetery. And meanwhile, Aaron was off partying like nothing happened. He was spotted within like days of the murders riding jet skis with a bunch of his like Bristol friends in a fancy harbor town of Newport, Rhode Island. He literally just killed 2 people, you know, it's like pretty wild. So at this point, like Aaron is getting away with his crimes over and over again. And I think it was just like proving to himself that he was untouchable. It seemed like he could get away with anything at this point. Aaron would literally go on to play a full season of football after killing 2 people. Like nothing happened. And he did a really great job. Like it's just wild. So then in February of 2013, Aaron and his friend Alexander, they flew down to Miami, Florida. And they were there because they wanted to party with one of Aaron's old teammates from the Florida Gators. His name was Deontay Thompson. So they go down there and they started like their party in Deontay's hometown, Belle Glade. And then they headed to a Miami strip club called Tootsie's. And I guess like the first night that they were there, Aaron had spent like $10,000 that first night. So while they were there partying in the VIP section, it was said that Aaron started to act all paranoid because he thought that the two older men that were sitting by them, he swore that they were cops from Boston. Now, there was no proof to even believe that these guys were cops, but Aaron was telling his friend Alexander, like, those are fucking cops, like, and being just paranoid, truly paranoid. And then on the second night at Tootsie's, because they go again, things got tense between Aaron and Alexander. It was said that they got into a fight over the bar bill, and then Alexander like forgot his phone in the club, and this seemed to just really annoy Aaron. Like, he was raging. So he's in a bad mood, and he tells everyone, like, let's go, we're leaving, right? So the whole group, they all leave, they get into the car, and they drove like north on Interstate 95. Alexander was in the back seat and he fell asleep. Alexander later testified that he woke up to Aaron holding a gun pointed right between his eyebrows. He has no idea like what is going on. And that's the last thing he remembers. Now, the next morning, as the sun came up, police found Alexander lying in a parking lot, bleeding from a bullet wound between his eyes. Aaron, nowhere to be found. At this point, he had already flown out of Florida, thinking like he was done with Alexander for good. Now, surprise, surprise, luckily, like, Alexander survived. Now, he ended up losing his right eye and needed like several surgeries. So despite everything, Alexander, he refused to cooperate with the police. So the police couldn't like prove or even link Aaron to the crime. Alexander, he would later testify in court that he didn't want to involve the police and he wanted to like handle it on his own, and he wanted revenge. In my personal opinion, I think he wanted to get money from Aaron, and you'll see. So if he involved the police, he wouldn't be able to like blackmail him, you know? Alexander, he ends up living. Now, Aaron doesn't know this. And the next day, Alexander, he ends up calling up Aaron. And he's like, guess who? And Aaron like played dumb, acting like he didn't know who it was. He's like, what? Who's this? Who's this? I don't know. But once the conversation ended, text messages from Alexander just start rolling in. In one of the texts, he said, like, you left me with one eye and a lot of head trauma. You owe for what you did. And then Aaron wrote back, like, if you ever got me in trouble or ruined my life for something I didn't do, you will pay. Just going back and forth, back and forth. And Alexander, like, he wasn't scared because he knew the truth, right? And he was telling Aaron, like, you don't scare me. You know, I have tons of guns and I'm going to do something about it, essentially. Brian Murphy, who was Aaron's agent, found out about the shooting. Aaron had told his agent that this Alexander guy was like threatening to either get money from him or kill him. So Brian Murphy, he reached out to Alexander's lawyer to try and like settle things quietly, but like that didn't work. There were no charges were ever filed against him for the shooting, and nobody like informed the Patriots coach about the situation. So it just kind of was going under the radar. And again, mind you, Aaron is still playing football. He's doing really great and buying a big old mansion. Everything is just like fine and dandy. But, you know, things are growing in Aaron's mind. Like, his paranoia was hitting a new level. So he ended up hiring another friend from his hometown. His name was Ernest. He went by Bo. Wallace is his last name. And he hired this guy to be like his bodyguard around the clock. And just like with like Aaron's other friends, Ernest also had a criminal record. But Aaron, you know, he trusted him to have his back. Aaron's really paranoid. So he ends up like in early April, Aaron had sent $15,000 to a friend. His name was Oscar Hernandez, no relation. And he was using this money to buy a used Toyota with two .22 caliber handguns and 2 rifles inside. And I guess in this car, they like made specific compartments where the guns would be hiding. Aaron would occasionally check in with this guy, Oscar, asking if like everything was going smoothly. And Oscar was like, hell yeah, you know, I almost got everything. But Aaron didn't stop there. He also spent over $110,000 on an armored 2013 Chevrolet Suburban that had been outfitted as an armored car. It was like a mini war wagon. For him, it was to feel safer. You know, he was paranoid that someone was going to come after him for what he had done. Meanwhile, Alexander, he's still around. Like, he's texting Aaron, pushing Aaron for money. He's texting Aaron, like, you can't go through life consequence-free when you do certain shit, you know? And a confrontation seemed to be getting closer and closer. Then on June 3rd, Alexander texted Aaron saying that he would be near the Patriots stadium, waiting there, like after practice, armed with a semi-automatic handgun, and he would be wearing a bulletproof vest. That day, the two of them exchanged like a staggering 125 text messages, just full of insults, accusations, threats. It was all talk, because like nothing ended up happening. But Alexander had warned Aaron that he was going to go public with a lawsuit if Aaron did not pay up. The next day, after all of the threatening text messages, Alexander had like texted Aaron demanding $5 million from him. It's like $5 million and this will all go away, you know? Aaron came back and offered him $1.5 million. And then Alexander came back saying, I'll accept $2.5 million. It was just kind of messy and sloppy, and like they just kept going back and forth, because then Alexander filed a federal suit against Aaron, and then he withdrew it like 4 days later before the news media caught wind of it. So I don't really know what happened there, you know, because then Aaron's agent had texted Aaron saying like they withdrew the lawsuit so we can engage in settlement talks without like the media getting involved, and that this was a huge win for us. So that's cool, I guess. But despite the win, the situation was just one part of like the trouble that was brewing in Aaron's life. And it wouldn't be long before things got even worse. So that brings us to Odin Lloyd. Now, Odin, he was born in November of 1985, and it was said that he grew up in a tough neighborhood, you know, and Odin saw football as like his way out and a chance at a better life for himself. By the time he was 27, Odin was playing semi-pro football for the Boston Bandits and had become good friends with Aaron. Now, they became close partly because Odin was dating Shania Jenkins, who happened to be the sister of Aaron's fiancée, Shiana Jenkins. That's how they like got to know each other. But you know, as they're spending time together, Aaron and Odin, they found out that they had a lot in common. Like they both obviously enjoyed playing football. They both enjoyed smoking weed, playing video games, and like going out to nightclubs. So they started hanging out like a lot. On the night of June 15, 2013, Odin bought Aaron a drink at a Boston club called Rumor, and it seemed like an ordinary night. But according to prosecutors, something that Odin said or did that evening upset Aaron. What was said has never been clearly proven, and it remains like one of the biggest mysteries of this case. Nobody knows exactly what happened. But after this, Odin was on Aaron's shit list pretty much. And then 2 days later, on June 17th, Aaron had been drinking with friends at his cousin Tanya's house. So they're all hanging out at Tanya's house, and they texted Odin asking him to hang out. Around 2:33 a.m., Aaron and his friends Ernest Wallace and this guy Carlos Ortiz picked up Odin from his house. I know, I was like 2:33 a.m. Like, who is up? They were. At that moment, Odin started to feel like something was off. Like he sat in the car, right? And when he's in the car, Odin is texting his sister. And it's like 3 a.m. and he texts his sister saying like, did you see who I'm with? And I guess she didn't answer right away. Like a few minutes had passed. And then he texted her again saying like, hello. And then his sister responded saying like, who? And Odin replied saying NFL, referring to Aaron Hernandez. Odin's last message was sent at 3:23 a.m. to his sister saying, just so you know. So many speculate that he felt like something was up and he was letting his sister know like who he was with. Now, literally everything that happened in between, big mystery. What we do know was that Odin was shot 6 times and left to die in an industrial park near Aaron's home, which was in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. The next morning, there was a jogger out minding his own freaking business, and that's when he came across Odin's body. And, you know, it was confirmed that he had been killed just a short distance from Aaron's mansion. So the police quickly come out and start investigating, and I was watching, like, interviews from what the police who were at the scene, and they were like, this was a sloppy job. The killer did a very sloppy job. Because nearby, there was a white towel found. There were shoe prints and tire prints in the mud. This was like a muddy area. There was a half-smoked blunt lying nearby. And the only tie Odin had to this neighborhood was Aaron Hernandez. So police searched phone records and saw that Aaron's phone was hitting cell towers that lined up with the crime. They also matched Aaron's shoe prints to those found in the mud. They matched the car tire marks to the ones in the mud with Aaron. They got surveillance footage from Aaron's house the night of the murder. And on the footage, there was like after the murder, they saw Aaron holding what looked like a gun. Again, there were those text messages from Odin to his sister saying like who he was with. Everything was pointing to Aaron. The police ended up searching Aaron's mansion June 18th, 2013, and then again June 22nd, 2013. Listen, the media got a hold of this story, right? And it was wild. It was all over the place. You couldn't avoid it. Aaron was being followed everywhere he went, being questioned. There was this one shot there was like a helicopter following Aaron, and he's driving on the freeway on his way to practice. He was either on his way to practice or he was meeting up with his coach or whatever. But it was on like every news media outlet. And of course, all of them were comparing it to OJ and his Bronco. Like it was definitely giving that same feeling. So on June 26, 2013, Aaron Hernandez was arrested at his home and charged with first-degree murder of Odin Lloyd, along with 5 firearm violations. There was a Globe sports writer who was, his name's Greg Bedard. He was outside of like Aaron's house that morning. He remembered the scene. He said that there must have been like 6 or 7 cop cars that drove in. And then not long after that, Aaron came out in cuffs wearing a white t-shirt. And then he said like at that moment, he realized this is not going to end well for Aaron Hernandez. And maybe you remember, I don't know why, but like that is burned into my memory of Aaron coming out with the white t-shirt on. Do you remember that scene? And like he didn't have his arms in the holes. It was just over, I don't know. I just remember it so well. Thank you so much. Less than 2 hours after his arrest, the Patriots, obviously, they released him from the team. Everyone wanted a statement from them. So like the Patriots owner, Robert Kraft, told the media that he felt he and the organization had been duped by Aaron. And then Coach Belichick, he was a little bit more reserved in his response. He kind of kept things vague. He gave like a 7-minute statement, barely mentioning Aaron's name. One of the things he said was that like overall he was proud of the hundreds of players that had come through the program, but that personally in that moment he was disappointed and hurt, but like never really mentioned Aaron's name. The investigation quickly spread to Aaron's friends and family, and on August 1st, 2013, Aaron's cousin, remember Tanya? She was sent to jail because she refused to testify before the grand jury about what she knew. Plus, the police had found the SUV that they were hiding from that first shooting in her garage. And she didn't want to say anything. She kept her mouth shut. She was loyal to Aaron. So she got in trouble. And then Aaron's legal troubles just like kept piling up. So Ernest Wallace pled not guilty to being an accessory after the murder on September 19th, 2013. And then Aaron himself pled not guilty to Odin's murder on September 6th. Carlos Ortiz was charged with being an accessory to Odin's murder on September 27th. And he also pled not guilty. Aaron's fiancée, Shayana Jenkins, she was also pulled into the investigation. This happened on October 16th, 2013, and she pled not guilty to perjury charges. She was accused of lying to the grand jury about helping Aaron get rid of a box that was believed to have contained the murder weapon. Because they couldn't find the murder weapon, it disappeared. These charges were eventually dropped. Meanwhile, Alexander, the friend who said Aaron had shot him in the face in Miami, he filed a lawsuit against him. And it just wasn't looking good. Aaron's lawyer stated that Aaron would be invoking his Fifth Amendment rights in this case, meaning that he would not be answering any questions about the whole shooting with Alexander. Now, at first, when he was arrested, he was held at the Bristol jail in a section for mentally ill or violent inmates, but he was still a football star, and it seemed like he got some privileges. So guards, they would let him do pull-ups on the stairs outside of his cell and exercise in a small cement courtyard instead of locking him up in one of the cells like everybody else. In the summer of 2014, Aaron was moved to the Suffolk County Jail in Boston while awaiting trial. It was said he played a lot of card games. He asked his fiancée to bring him more Harry Potter books. I guess he really liked the Harry Potter books. And during his time in jail, Aaron just really clung to the people who would still take his calls, his fiancée, his mom, some of his old friends. His fiancée would call him. They would talk on the phone twice daily. She seemed really frustrated with him, to be fair. She had a good reason to be frustrated with him. I mean, he ruined everything. On May 15, 2014, things got even more serious when Aaron was indicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder for the 2012 shootings of those 2 men, Daniel and Safiro, the one that happened outside the club. Yeah, so that now was added to his list of charges. Aaron, he pled not guilty. And then he was indicted for witness intimidation related to the 2013 shooting of Alexander. So, listen, it was just a whole mess and everything was coming up. Just come back up. You can't run from it. Karma. Is that karma? Consequences for his actions. So the trial for the murder of Odin Lloyd had started on January 29, 2015, and it lasted about 3 months. Prosecutors showed the jury video footage that they said proved Aaron had picked up Odin Lloyd in his car. They then showed footage taken later at Aaron's house where Odin was no longer in the car. They also presented an image of Aaron's home surveillance system that showed him standing outside his basement, holding what the district attorney said looked like a gun. Now, Aaron's defense team argued that being there wasn't enough to prove he was guilty. They were trying to say that the other 2 guys that were there with Aaron that night, they were actually the ones that killed Odin, and that Aaron was scared that they were going to do something to him if he said anything, so he didn't say anything, and that him and Odin were really good friends and he would never do this to a good friend. That's what they were saying. The prosecution believed that Odin was killed with a .45 caliber Glock pistol, which uses a magazine or a clip to load bullets. And then in court, they showed text messages that Aaron had sent to his friend Ernest just a week before Odin's murder, where Aaron was mentioning clips for the gun. Prosecutors also pointed out that many text messages had been deleted from Aaron's phone and the other 2 guys, which suspicious, Well, listen, on October 15th, 2015, after 6 days of discussing the evidence, the jury ended up finding Aaron Hernandez guilty of Odin Lloyd's murder. Everyone in the courtroom was very emotional. Like, yeah, I mean, for good reason, you know? But, like, Aaron showed no emotion. Like, nothing. He was sentenced to life in prison without, like, any chance of getting out. Okay? You think, I don't know, he would show some kind of emotion. The other two guys, Aaron's friends, Carlos and Ernest, they were like tried separately and were found guilty of being accessories to the murder. They were each sentenced to like 4 to 7 years in prison. Aaron was sent to like a high security prison about 40 miles outside of Boston. And while Aaron was in prison, he opened up to his mother in ways that he hadn't before. Now, him and his mom had a pretty like rocky relationship. He was telling her on the phone like that she never really knew him and that he couldn't trust her. And then eventually he opened up and told her like 2 painful secrets. He ended up telling her that he was gay and that he had been molested as a child. Let me put this wig on. Aaron's lawyer, his name is George, he thought like admitting this to his mom like helped him, Aaron, like deal with his feelings of self-hatred because he seemed to really not like himself. So Aaron hired a new defense lawyer, Jose Baez, for his second murder trial that started in March of 2017. Jose is considered to be like a celebrity lawyer because you know who he represented previously? You'll never guess. Casey Anthony. Oh yeah. Look, if someone's gonna get you out of being super guilty, I think it'd be this guy. Don't you feel like if you hire like a lawyer who's represented someone who is super guilty, that just kind of makes you look super guilty too? Or is that just me? It's like, oh, you must be super guilty if you're hiring Casey Anthony's front-end lawyer. So this second trial was about the 2012 shooting of Daniel and Safiro. And Aaron and his old friend Alexander, remember? They were the ones being accused of these murders. Now, this time, Alexander actually testified against Aaron to avoid facing murder charges himself. The two had become enemies after Aaron shot him in the face in Florida. I mean, understandable. But, you know, Aaron had hired this guy who just like knew what he was doing. And on April 14th, 2017, the jury decided that Aaron was not guilty of the murders. They didn't believe Aaron was the one who fired the gun. Plus, they really pointed the finger at Alexander because Alexander had like a lengthy track record. So they're like, it was that guy. Oh, it wasn't good. Now, this was the first time you actually saw some emotion from Aaron. Like when they read the verdict, Aaron cried. And I guess like this win gave him hope that his lawyer might be able to challenge the conviction for ODIN LLOYD's murder next. Like they were going to try and prove that Aaron was not the one who shot the gun. I forgot to put on my pink shirt. Hold on. I'm a mess. I'm all over the place. Okay. I feel like a different woman. I need a cigarette. On April 18th, 2017, Aaron Hernandez ended up taking his own life. It was really like dramatic. So that night, the door to his cell opened and he stepped out like it was any other day. But instead of going to the gym, he ended up like turning back around and going back into his cell. And like another inmate snuck into Aaron's cell and like hid under the bed. Aaron wasn't planning to work out. Instead, he and this other inmate, they smoked a drug called K2. It looks like weed, but I guess it's like way more dangerous. So the two of them, I guess, talked about life, God, and death. And then 2 hours later, the other inmate left. Prison officials didn't seem to notice any of this. None of it. And then Aaron, he made his usual phone calls, the last one being with his fiancée. She said that their conversation was completely normal. Everything seemed fine. He returned to his cell just before 8 p.m. Aaron chatted with like other inmates through his door. A guard passed by his cell like several times during the night. But around 3 a.m., the guard noticed a sheet hanging over Aaron's cell door. So he called out to Aaron and was getting like no response. So he actually opened up the door, and that's when he found Aaron hanging from the window bars with a bed sheet around his neck. Also, there was shampoo spread all over the floor, so it would be like really slippery. And Aaron had written John 3:16 on his forehead in blood. Yeah. Bible verse about God's love and eternal life. And then he also drew a series of like symbols and references, including what looked like an unfinished pyramid and an all-seeing eye, which, you know, commonly associated with Masonic or Illuminati imagery. All of this just added mystery. What? Right? Like bizarre. What? Very confusing. So the guards, they finally freed him. They cut him down. They took turns doing chest compressions until the paramedics arrived, but it was too late. At 4:07 a.m., Aaron Hernandez was declared dead. Okay, look, there's a theory that Aaron Hernandez might have taken his own life in an attempt to secure financial benefits for his fiancée and their daughter. The idea is based on a legal concept known as abatement ab initio. I know. I was like, what? Listen, it's a real thing. The first person who did this was like a Catholic priest who did some shit and got away with it. That should be another murder mystery. But listen, here's how it works and why people believe this might have been his motive. So the abatement whatever rule in Massachusetts at the time of Aaron's death, the legal principle of abatement ab initio meant that if a person died while their criminal case was still under appeal, their conviction would be vacated. Essentially, it would be as if they were never convicted of the crime. So since Aaron Hernandez had appealed his 2015 conviction for the murder of ODIN LLOYD, his death on April 19, 2017, triggered this legal rule, resulting in his conviction being temporarily vacated. Now, by having his murder conviction vacated, Aaron might have believed it would allow his family to pursue any remaining salary or bonuses owed to him from his NFL contract with the Patriots. Also, it could have prevented wrongful death lawsuits filed by ODIN LLOYD's family from moving forward against his estate. If Aaron's conviction was erased, the Patriots and the NFL might have been legally obligated to pay out his contract, potentially providing financial support to his fiancée and his daughter. Also, Aaron left 3 suicide notes before his death, one for his fiancée, one for his daughter, and one for his lawyer, Jose Baez. The content of these letters hasn't been fully disclosed, but reports suggest that they contained messages of love and hinted that he might have been thinking about this strategy. Jose, the lawyer, later confirmed that Aaron was aware of this rule. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people think that's what he was trying to do. After Aaron's autopsy, his brain was sent to a neuropathologist. Her name is Dr. Ann McKee. It was sent to her research lab at Boston University. And Dr. Ann McKee is one of the leading experts in the world studying the long-term effects of brain injuries, especially in athletes, military veterans, and like others who have experienced repeated concussions and like head impacts, you know? So she's like the one who's like studying this. She's the shit. Dr. McKee announced that Aaron had the worst case of CTE that she had ever seen in someone so young. What's CTE? Well, maybe you've heard of it, but CTE is a brain disease caused by repeated head injuries, which is like really common among football players, you know? They're constantly... She studied Aaron's brains, and like part of his brain had shrunk while others had become unusually large. There were microbleeds and a protein called tau, which usually is found in Alzheimer's patients. brains, yes. But it was all over his brain. She said on a scale from 1 to 4, 4 being like the worst, Aaron's CDE was rated as stage 3. I was watching this interview with her, and she showed a picture of like a normal brain at his age, and then his brain, full on holes, just missing parts. It was wild. Like his head was fucked up. So Dr. McKee explained that people with severe CTE often have trouble controlling like their impulses, making decisions, and usually they have a really hard time managing their anger. Now, is this an excuse? No. You know, it's not an excuse. He still did what he did, but it gives us some like answers and insight as to why he was so paranoid, just psychotic, really, you know? Well, finally, on March 13, 2019, the Massachusetts Supreme Court changed its mind and decided that Aaron's conviction should not have been erased, making him officially guilty of ODIN LLOYD's murder once again. So that meant his conviction was reinstated, which would stop any potential financial benefits his family might have received from his suicide. It's not proven that Aaron killed himself solely for financial reasons. There's evidence suggesting that he was aware of this potential legal loophole and may have hoped his death would benefit his family financially. But listen, like his plan ultimately didn't work out, you know? It didn't work out the way he might have intended. That was a lot. And that is everything I learned about the Aaron Hernandez case, my friends. Look, at the end of the day, it's a shame because he was really talented. I don't watch football or anything like that. I know, I'm sorry. Whatever. But like I was watching clips of him and like he was so good, and it's such a shame, huh? I don't know. Would love to hear what you have to say down below. I know I look absolutely insane. I have my Tonka. If you haven't watched the show, you have no idea what I'm going for, and that's okay. I could be anything. I could be your Aunt Linda who lives in Florida, has a cigarette. I could be, I don't know. I'm really anything. Tonka. McDonald's chicken nuggets. This was a little chaotic, wasn't it? I'm talking about like football while dressing as a crazy monkey lady. I don't know how to end this. Anyways, let me know what you guys think down below. Sports, huh? Yeah. You know what's funny, actually? It's not funny, but when you think about like crazy sports person who's crazy, I always think OJ, right? OJ. It's always OJ. But Aaron, he's kind of like he kind of did worse. I don't know. I guess it isn't a competition of who's worse. I think maybe they're both bad, Bailey. Two things can be right at the same time. Anyways, I hope you have a good rest of your day, a happy and safe Halloween. You make good choices. You be safe out there, please. And I'll be seeing you guys later. Goodbye. Bye. Wow. Huh? Aaron Hernandez? Yeah. His attorney, though, represented Casey Anthony. You know that? Yep. Little tidbit there, huh? His story is like another one where head trauma may have had a huge impact on his decision making. That does not excuse their behavior, but yeah, I think there's something to be said about that. It's a bummer. Aaron Hernandez really like had everything going for him. He was such a great player. I watched because I remember some of my girlfriends all had crushes on him and thought he was so cute. So I remember thinking he was cute too, just because that's how I knew him. And then when all of that shit went down, I was like, what? Wild, right? Wild. Anyways, our next episode, like all of them, it's rough. It features a very, very, very bad Santa. Listen, it's messed up from top to bottom. It sure is. Yeah. So our next story is the Covina Christmas Massacre. And listen, it's a lot. This is yep. It's a lot. I hope you have a happy holiday and a happy and safe new year too. The end. Goodbye. Just kidding. But yeah, I hope you have a happy and safe holiday. I can't believe this year is done so. Wow. Okay, but today's story is not great, per usual, and really sad. So here goes that. So let's paint the picture. It's Christmas Eve 2008 in Covina, California. Now, Covina, California, if you don't know, is like a little suburb in Los Angeles County, and it's a suburb. That's really what you could say about it. It's about 20 miles east of downtown LA. And today, at least, it has around 50,000 people in its like 7 square miles area. So in this suburb is where the Ortega family was having their yearly Christmas Eve get-together at home of Jose and Alice Ortega. Now, the Ortegas were said to be like the all-American, just living the all-American dream. Jose, who the family called Papa Joe, his parents were immigrants, and he was like the first generation of his family to be born here. And I mean, he had done really well for himself and his family. In 2008, he retired, and he was living happily as a retired man. But his son, because he was running his own business for a while, and his son ended up taking over, and one of his sons ended up expanding the business when Joe retired. What I'm getting at is a family business. Joe's family is all up in it, still running it, keeping it going, and Joe is retired. So Joe and his wife, Alice, they invited the whole family over for Christmas Eve, and they did this every year. So it was like just what they did. Great. So the house was packed. It had all of Joe and Alice's children, their wives and husbands, their grandchildren, and the house, was just filled with everybody. There had to be at least 25 people inside the home, and they're just having a great time, Christmas Eve, great. Most of the adults were in the living room, and they were playing poker, which was like a family tradition. When they all got together on Christmas Eve, they always played poker. And then other members of the family were like sitting around in the living room, chatting, having hot cocoa, whatever. And then there's like kids scattered around the house, somewhere in the backyard playing. And yeah, just everyone is everywhere. You get it. If you have a big family, everyone is everywhere. Whoops. Well, around 11:30 at night, some of the family decided, it's kind of late. Maybe we should start to head home. They have kids. They don't want to miss Santa, So they start packing up to head out, and one of the kids in the living room sees someone out the window, and whoever this person was looked very familiar, and they're walking up towards the house. And she's looking, and she notices this person has a bright red coat and a big white beard. Yeah. So the girl, it's a little girl, her name is Katrina. She's like, oh my God, it's freaking Santa Claus. He's coming right up to the front door. He was carrying a huge box with him, right? And he's pulling this box. I guess he's pulling it, not carrying it. Pulling this box up. It's all wrapped up like it's a beautiful Christmas present. And this little girl's just excited. Katrina, she believes it's Santa. She's only 8 years old at the time. So she's stoked. And what does she do? She runs straight to the front door, opens up the door, and yells Santa's here. Well, when she opened up the door, it wasn't presents with him or reindeer or anything like that. In the other hand that he wasn't using to carry the huge present, this Santa Claus person had a 9mm handgun. Bitch. And as soon as the front door opened, he was firing on the whole Ortega family. Fucking what? Yes. What? What a douche. What a dick move. On Christmas Eve, you fucking dick. Obviously, his first target was the little girl, Katrina. She had opened the door, and I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, she ends up being okay. She was the first to be shot at, but luckily for her injury wasn't fatal, and she's okay. Unfortunately for everybody else, they weren't as lucky. It's awful.
So the adults were all gathered around the poker table in the living room. And I guess the Santa guy, when he gets in through the front door, he just has a quick, clear view of them. So he just starts firing away. So I guess somebody in the family had shouted for everybody to get down on the floor. But the bullets were already freaking flying by that point. And in just a few minutes, the scene had gone from this wholesome family Christmas Eve magical moment to a freaking massacre. This is such an awful story. Christmas. A few of the Ortegas who hadn't been in the living room at the time, there's like a few of them who managed to escape out the back of the house. Most of them were children who were already playing out back by the pool. And once Santa had finished shooting everybody downstairs, he cleared out the upstairs as well. And once he determined that there wasn't anyone left inside, he takes his present that he brought with him. It's big. He unwraps it. And I guess inside this present, there was what looked like a fuel tank, like a propane tank, but for racing fuel, and a makeshift nozzle bottled and welded in place on top of it. So basically, it was a homemade flamethrower. Yeah, this Santa is fucked up. What? Yeah. What? Yes. Yes. I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? No. 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 The hell is wrong? So the Santa guy pulls out his flamethrower and starts setting the place on fire. Okay? Now, meanwhile, the 911 lines are lighting up. One of the adults who was inside of the house managed to escape, and her name was Letitia, and she actually was able to hop the fence in her backyard, hop the fence, and go to the neighbor's house to use their phone to call 911. But by that time, neighbors were already on top of it, calling in to 911 left and right because they heard all these gunshots and whatnot. So all the neighbors who had called, they all reported something similar, that many of them had seen a man dressed as Santa, show up to the Ortega's house, shot up the place, and now like he was setting it on fire. And like, we're not talking just like normal flames, which are still bad and scary, right? But these were like 50-foot flames. This was intense. Yeah. I mean, these flames were set by someone who wanted this house to just not even exist anymore. Firefighters are able to get out there, and it takes about 80 firefighters several hours to even put the flames out. And by that time, everyone who hadn't made it outside was dead. So police are questioning the neighbors, asking if like any of them had any other description of who this person was, anything, right? So one neighbor came forward and said that she had seen someone drive away in a blue Dodge just minutes before the police had gotten there. And she remembered it being weird because, well, for starters, she heard all the gunshots and now there was a freaking fire. But for two, the car was driving away from the scene with all of its lights turned off. So there's something going on right there in that moment, in that very time. So obviously police are like very concerned that whoever had done this, obviously most likely was in that car and had gotten away. And if so, was this Santa? Was he going to go visit other houses that night? I mean, shit. What the fuck? He might. We don't know. Okay, well, what if I told you that what happened at the Ortega's house that night wasn't the only murder that happened that night? Nay, it was not. Because roughly 40 miles away, police were called to a little home where a man named Bruce Pardo, he was found with a 9mm bullet hole through his head. And there was also a handgun in his lap. And then there was another on the floor. So, something ain't right. Now, this suggested to police that, I don't know, maybe there was more than one shooter and that maybe this guy was trying to defend himself, but the killer maybe shot him first. Whoever the killer was, though, they had left behind the murder weapon, which is like a rookie mistake, but it was good news for police. You know, they got the biggest clue they need for this case, the murder weapon. So you're probably wondering why this guy is related in the first place. You're like, what the heck? What does he have to do with anything? Because his house was not burned down. Well, the house that they found this guy at, it was his brother's house. His brother's the one that found him. So when police were finally able to get inside of what was left of the Ortega house, they found the bodies of 9 people. All of them they could identify only through dental records because of how badly burned they all were. Like, just horrific scene, okay? And they all shared one thing in common. All of them had a single hole the size of a 9mm bullet in their body. Most of them had it in their heads, and it was all fired from a very close range. And it almost looked exactly the same as the body of Bruce Pardo. And it happened the same night. So even though Bruce's home wasn't burned down, it looked very similar to what happened to the Ortega family. The wounds were similar, the distance, okay, the time it happened, it just kind of all linked together, and police were believing that these 2 cases were most likely connected. Now, of course, it made police super nervous because here they are on Christmas Day with 10 bodies right in front of them, okay, and they had no idea who had done it besides some guy dressed as Santa, which is just all sorts of fucked up. So they were worried that whoever had done it is probably still out there, could be like actively shooting people, just thinking the worst, okay? I mean, can you imagine waking up to in your neighborhood, you hear that there's like a manhunt for an active shooter dressed as Santa? I mean, that shit's fucked up. But that's what they were dealing with. So police have to start somewhere, right? So they're like, okay, let's like dig around in people's backgrounds and I don't know, maybe it'll lead us somewhere, because it always does. It always does. So they start with Bruce, like if there's a connection between this Bruce guy and the Ortega family, like maybe they are linked somehow and it made them a target. Because to police, the bullet holes, I mean, they weren't there to just, I mean, whoever had done it, like wanted these people dead, okay? And then to freaking torch the place, hide evidence or something, I don't know, but it was a crime of passion, to say the least. So they start looking to the personal histories of the victims and figure out if there's any type of connection. And boy, did they find a connection. They found one. They start with Bruce. They see that Bruce is a local in the area, okay? He grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and he went to college. He went to college for computer sciences at California State Northridge. So he's like a little smart one, you know? College. Oh. So right after this Bruce guy graduated, he started working as a software engineer at the Jet Propulsion Lab, or JPL. Nowadays, it's where a lot of development into NASA spacecraft is done. When it was founded, though, it was a missile development place, like for war missiles, but now it's like has to do with space and NASA. Anyway, so yeah, there's where he was working. I guess things were pretty okay for Bruce. And then in the 1980s, things got messy, okay? He had a string of just really bad relationships. He even had an engagement that, no joke, he ran out of, full on, left his bride at the altar with his mother and brother, who were all waiting for him. Doesn't show up. He ran. That's fucked up. Well, this story's fucked up, but like that's fucked up too. Lots of things can be fucked up. I mean, why do that on your wedding day? Damn, it's like you've got to waste everyone's goddamn time. Then in 2001, Bruce was in a sort of relationship. You know, they're like together, but they're not together, but they're together. They're booking. But he was with this woman named Elena, and they weren't married or anything, but they had been seeing each other off and on for like quite some time. And the 2 of them ended up having a son together. And then I guess, I don't know what happened. Very strange, but I mean, it could have happened. We don't know. One day, Bruce comes over and he's watching his son because Elena, I guess she had to go run some errands and she didn't have anyone to watch their son. So Bruce goes over to the house watching the son. Everything's peaches and cream. Elena comes home. She sees her son in Bruce's hands, and like he appears to be limp in his arms. Their son, limp. I don't know. freaks out, right? So she's asking, like, what the hell happened? What happened? What happened? And Bruce tells Elena that their son had somehow gotten away, whatever that means, gotten away, and he slipped into the pool. Yeah. So they are rushing to an intensive care unit, and it's just not looking good for their child, Matthew. And then he ends up staying there. The child stays there for a couple of weeks. And I guess the doctors informed Bruce and Elena that Matthew had suffered some terrible brain damage and he wouldn't be able to walk ever again. They didn't believe. So Matthew was diagnosed as paraplegic. Crushing, I'm sure. Bruce ended up staying the night with Matthew in the hospital. I mean, he ended up staying there like almost every night up until the doctors gave him the news that Matthew is stabilized. So after that, Bruce started showing up less and less. And eventually he and Elena broke up and Bruce decided that he didn't want to see his son anymore. He even stopped helping Elena with Matthew's medical bills, which were like climbing into the 6 figures, according to Elena's lawyer. And so she ends up suing Bruce to get him to help her pay with the bills. She ended up winning that case in 2002, and she would end up getting some money from Bruce's insurance policies. And then after that, Bruce completely stopped communicating with Elena and his son. Just goodbye. 2 years go by. Bruce is then introduced to a woman named Sylvia Ortiz, and they hit it off. They seem to really hit it off. They end up liking each other, start dating, and they get married in 2006. So for a little bit, things started to look good for Bruce. He and Sylvia, they did tons of things together. I mean, they were a very active family, and there was always some kind of group outing or an adventure. He was planning for his daughter and Sylvia's 3 kids. So they're just living together, big happy family, and things seemed to be really good. But it wasn't long. Well, it kind of was long, unfortunately, a little too long, until Sylvia found out about Bruce's former wife and his disabled son. Yeah, she had to find out. He never told Sylvia about this. He was like, no. He just ignored that whole part of his life. I mean, I could understand as to why he doesn't want to tell her about it, because it doesn't make him look great. But it's just unfortunate. I mean, how would you tell your partner that, like on a first date? Yeah, I abandoned my last family. I'm looking to settle down. You'd run. Okay, so Sylvia finds out, and I guess, I don't know exactly like how she finds out. I think it's like she had been going through tax forms, and she was claiming Matthew, this child, as he was claiming, Bruce was claiming, this child, Matthew, as a dependent on his tax forms so he could get money. Pause. What? Huh? Excuse me? Why are you doing that? Why do you get the money? What did you do besides leave? What'd you do? Gross. So if you don't live in America, when you do taxes, actually, I don't even have kids, so I don't even know how it works, but I think you get money when you have kids, right? You get like, you claim it on your taxes, and then they're like, here's money because you have kids. I just know you get money, okay? But like in this case, he shouldn't be claiming Matthew because he's not taking care of Matthew. It should be the person who's taking care of the child who claims. And then when you claim the child, the other person can't claim the child. So fuck that guy, right? Yeah. Just what? So Sylvia sees this. She's like, who's this child he's claiming? Huh? So this piece of work over here, yeah, Bruce, yeah, he wanted nothing to do with this child, but he's like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna like claim him and get tax credits. Yay. Like just everything that sucks is Bruce. Great. Glad we settled that. A common theme that seemed to come up a lot when you look into Bruce's past is that he was always stressing and always over concerned with money. Like when he would talk with friends, family, whatever, it's always like talking about money, his finances, like how much he has, how much does that cost? I can't do that. It's just, it was consuming him. And that got so much worse when Elena sued him for medical support, which, I mean, makes sense. If you're already worried about money and now you're being sued, it's probably going to stress you out. Anyway, the point is that he was a big time stressor about money and how he was going to get it. Things ended up getting worse for Bruce over here. He ended up breaking his knee. Yeah, I don't know how. Sorry about that. Forgot to look. He breaks his knee. Now, this forces him to start working from home. And, you know, if you live in America and you're not doing well financially, you know that breaking a body part can freaking ruin your whole life. It's over, bitch. That's it. You're done. It's disturbing, but this is where we're at. Anyways, so he breaks his knee. He's already stressed out about money. He's now got medical bills. He's working from home. Things are not great. Sylvia, his current wife, she told her friends that the injury made him like into a completely different person. He didn't show any type of joy, interest, emotion, anything anymore. And he would just be a little hermit up at his computer all day and just working. And he would go days upon days without changing his clothes or showering, which just sounds like depression, right? Don't really blame him. Shit's not working out so great. Not going as planned, I could see. Which nowadays, I think we have a better understanding of depression, maybe are a bit more forgiving. But to Sylvia, it was like she didn't quite understand. And the man she married had just vanished. And she was like, I don't like this person. They used to go from having family dinners all the time, different adventures, to nothing. And she tried to support him, but support him like be compassionate. There you go. There's the word. But you know, after quite some time, it was just a lot. She's like, this is a lot. Sylvia said that there was one moment where she had to ask herself, like, who the heck did I marry? Like, I don't even know this guy. Okay, finding out about his secret son. It seemed like that was the last straw. And in 2008, Sylvia was filing for divorce. After all that, Bruce was like, dude, this shit sucks, bro. This shit sucks. He was just done. He was at his last straw. In early June 2008, as part of the divorce, Bruce was ordered by a judge to pay Sylvia $1,700 a month in spousal support. And during the court proceedings, Sylvia, I guess, she's like giving the evidence as to why she wants to divorce him, right? So she's airing out everything that she was having issues with Bruce about. She talked about his spending habits. She talked about his son that he hadn't told anyone about. She talked about his depression. And basically, she was just airing out all of what Bruce considered his dirty laundry. And he didn't want anyone to know about this kind of stuff. Because to everybody else, Bruce was like this friendly, easygoing father figure. He didn't want people knowing what was going on behind the scenes in his personal life, probably for obvious reasons. And according to a couple of Bruce's friends, the divorce and the divorce proceedings just had a huge effect on him, and it sent him into an even bigger and deeper depression. Well, on June 11th, Bruce, he ends up going down to Burbank, which is not far, and he goes to a gun store, and he ends up buying a handgun with cash, okay? Then in July, right after he was ordered to start paying Sylvia, he lost his job. Bitch, talk about a bad fucking day. He got caught for billing his employers for hours he wasn't actually working, aka he was stealing. And then on August 8th, he ends up buying a second handgun from the same store. And in California, there's a 30-day waiting period. You have to wait after buying a gun before you can buy another one, which is like a little fun fact, I guess. Didn't know that. I don't know what it's supposed to do. But anyways, so he had to wait 30 days. He got that second gun. And then on September 8th, there's another receipt for another handgun he bought. And then on October 11th, he bought a fourth handgun. He literally waited each month, you know? I don't know what he needs 4 handguns for. He only has 2 hands. Now, it was odd because, you know, this Bruce guy, he's always afraid about money and spending money and all that stuff, but he always had money for handguns, that's for sure. He's like, I don't have money for kids. I don't have money for my other kid, but I got money for guns. So, October of that year, 2008, a friend of Bruce's, his name is Steve. Steve lived in Iowa, and Steve was told Bruce, like, hey, you should come out. You should come out, visit for my birthday. Let's celebrate. Let's get together. You just need to get away. Get away. And Bruce is like, you know what, that sounds like a good idea. So he goes out to Iowa and visits Steve, where he ends up just opening up about everything that's going on. He told him that he'd been spending most of his time, quote, thinking about everything, which is like very vague, but that was him opening up. And then Bruce admitted that he was embarrassed about how the divorce proceedings went in court. Also, the fact that when he was fired, it was like publicly discussed, and he was just super embarrassed about everything. And then what made it even worse for him was that his mother, Bruce's mother, she wanted nothing to do with him. I guess they weren't even talking anymore. I guess his mom came to the divorce proceedings, and she actually chose to sat on Sylvia's side to support her and not her own son. And this obviously upset Bruce. Like, why are you supporting her and not me, your son? I guess Bruce's mother, she supported Sylvia's side. It's not clear as to why, but I think we can all assume, right? This Bruce guy, he doesn't really seem to be that great. So I could see maybe why she didn't want to side with him. I guess Brucey boy over here was really blaming everything that was happening to him on Sylvia. Sorry, that was... He was blaming everything on Sylvia. He's like, why is this happening to me? It's all Sylvia's fault. Some people just can't take accountability. They always got to blame somebody else. I don't know, Bruce. Maybe you shouldn't have been stealing and shit. Maybe you should have been a better father. Maybe you shouldn't have lied. But yeah, it's Sylvia's fault. So his whole life felt like his whole life was falling apart, and Sylvia was to blame. So that's pretty much Bruce. So the police did some digging, and that's what they ended up finding on Bruce. That was his 2008. I mean, what a shitty year for him. So what does any of Bruce's life have to do with the Ortegas, right? Well, police were wondering the same thing, and they're doing some digging on this guy, and they're like, okay, obviously things weren't great for him, right? At first, it seemed like there really wasn't a connection at all, just nothing. To them, it seemed like this guy was just having a really bad time, to say the least, but there was no connection between him and the Ortegas. That is, until they looked into his now ex-wife, Sylvia. You see, while police were digging around all of this stuff up, they found out that Sylvia's maiden name was Ortega. Yeah, Ortega. And Sylvia Ortega was among one of those who was killed on the Christmas Eve massacre situation. Sylvia and Bruce, their divorce had been finalized on December 18th, which was like barely a week before the massacre. Yeah. And then on top of all this, as part of the settlement of his and Sylvia's divorce, Bruce was ordered to pay $10,000 out of pocket as part of like the agreement. And on top of that, she also got to keep her engagement ring. Which I know. I don't know how you feel about that, but it seemed like that really irked Bruce, who needed the money. He's like, you want $10,000 and you're keeping the ring? Fuck. An assumption, right? So then this man, Bruce, who has no money, allegedly, he ends up going back to that gun store on November 13th, and he buys another gun. So now he has 5 guns. Yeah. I don't know what he's doing. No one knows what he's doing. Well, I don't know. With Sylvia's marriage to Bruce officially tying everything together in terms of like a motive, police were desperate to interview anyone who had survived the fire and the shooting to see if they could identify who this Santa was, because they believed it's Bruce and they're hoping they can get an ID. The only trouble was that the few who did escape, they were either children who ran out the back before this attacker had even gotten to them, so they didn't even see who it was. And the only adults in the room who made it out and may be able to ID this person were the parents of the 8-year-old girl who opened the front door. And they were in the hospital with their daughter, so police weren't able to get an ID. They had to wait. Okay, so the police go back to where, they found Bruce's body. Bruce was found at his brother's house, and it was Bruce's brother who actually found him and called 911 when he came home and saw Bruce, and there was like a pile of blood. There were 2 guns that they saw inside of the car. Bruce had been killed up close, and given everything that they dug up about Bruce, they were able to match the guns to Bruce, like he was the one who owned them. So the theory of there being multiple shooters went out the window, because they were Bruce's guns. They even found another gun strapped to his leg. So he had 3 guns on him. All right. Okay. So outside of Bruce's brother's house, a block away, a neighbor called in a very suspicious looking vehicle that was parked outside, and they believe that this car didn't belong to any of the neighbors because they watched the area. They know the cars. And when police came by and ran the plates on the car, well, guess what? It matched the description of the car that the neighbors saw at the Ortega's that was leaving with no lights on. Not only that, but when they scan the plates, it comes back telling the police that the car wasn't anyone at all. So it was actually a rental. And they found out that it was rented earlier that week to Bruce. What the fuck are you doing? What a dick. Police, they go to look inside of the vehicle, right, for evidence. So they open it up, and what do they find? A Santa suit. I know. But then get this, because this is wild. They open up the car, and then they're looking through it, and they see the Santa suit. But when they lifted the Santa suit up, like the entire suit, they're like, Santa suit. It caught on fire. The whole thing caught on fire. Just, I mean, you can look, there's pictures of it, okay? There's pictures of it, no joke. I guess it's believed that Bruce had rigged the car to explode if someone were to come looking for him, which, I mean, he put in some serious thought and work into this. Very strange. I don't know. But the car blew up. There's pictures of it. Whoa. That's a lot. Now, after that, the police found out that he bought a plane ticket to his friend Steve's house in Iowa, the same guy that he visited earlier, remember? Yeah. He bought the ticket. He bought a ticket to go see Steve so that police would suspect that he went to Iowa, okay? But police instead found out that he rented another car, Bruce. He rented another car, okay? And inside of this car, because they were able to locate it, they found food, guns, ammo, maps of the US/Mexico border. So it's believed that Bruce's plan was to, go to fucking Mexico. Bye. And then police would be looking for him in Iowa. That's fucked up too, because now you just involved with your friend Steve. What a dick. So all this evidence is just piling up. Everything's pointing to Bruce. And there's really no sense for them to suspect that it was anybody else at this point. And once they were able to talk to one of the adults at the party, Letitia, they were able to confirm that she saw that it was Bruce who came through that door dressed as Santa. Letitia was able to confirm for the police basically the entire timeline of what happened that night. So I guess what happened that night was Bruce showed up, right? Santa, hey. And he starts shooting everyone right away. But he was mainly trying to go for like Sylvia, okay? And then after he thought he killed everyone in the house, he took out his makeshift flamethrower. Whoa, am I having a stroke? After he thought he killed everyone in the house, he took out his makeshift flamethrower thing and started spraying fire all over the place. Dude. What do you think? He wasn't going to get caught? Okay. Makes sense, right? Makes sense. But why did Bruce go to his brother's house and kill himself instead of go to Mexico? I mean, again, based off all the evidence they found, his plan was to go to Mexico. He even bought the plane ticket to make it look like he went to Steve's instead. So, like, what changed? It's believed. Theories. Bruce's flamethrower was filled with some kind of racing fuel. I guess it's like extremely sensitive to heat, and in an enclosed space rather than just like normal gasoline or lighter fluid, it's just extremely sensitive. That's what this means. So I'm very handsy today, I'm sorry. At one point during his torching of the Ortega's home, the flames, they got loose and Bruce ended up setting himself on fire in the Santa suit. Oh yeah, so the theory is that the Ortegas probably had like an open flame somewhere in the house. Maybe someone was cooking something, maybe there were candles lit, something along those lines, but there had to be a flame somewhere. I mean, they don't know because, you know, the house burned down. But the suspicion is that Bruce wasn't aware that there was this open flame in the house when he started spreading the racing fuel around. And boom shakalaka, the house caught fire before Bruce was even like ready. And as a result, his ass caught on fire too. So when medical examiners got a hold of Bruce's remains and started taking all of his clothes off, that's when they saw not only did he have a gunshot wound through the back of his head, but he had been burned, like severely burned all over his body. And not just normal burn, which is still bad, normal burn bad. This guy was like baked, torched, broiled. So again, this is all theories here because I don't know, but given the nature of like how badly burned he was, they believe, the coroners believe that he was probably in so much pain. Okay, he's probably in excruciating pain that he decided just to kill himself. The bullets, exit wounds, it matched an angle that would have made sense for Bruce to have been holding it himself, aka he killed himself. Again, rumors, but I mean, that's, you could believe that, right? At his brother's house? That's fucked up. This Bruce guy is just all sorts of fucked up. He's fucked up on a different kind of level. And that's kind of it, really. I mean, there wasn't a trial or anything because Bruce was dead. And police did eventually piece together that Bruce had actually intended on killing more people that night before going to Mexico. Yeah. Apparently, he had a list of a couple of names that he was marking off. Aside from Sylvia, he also was going to kill his ex-wife's attorney and also his own mother. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. He was going to kill his own mom. He was, huh? Yeah, he was. But I guess he got burned so badly, it just kind of good, you know? But still bad, but whatever. And not only that, his mom was actually invited to go to the Ortega's house that night, and she was supposed to be there. But she ended up staying home because she was feeling sick. Poor thing. Hope she's okay. Well, as a final note, since there wasn't a trial or anything, the single surviving daughter of Joe and Alice, Letitia, the one who identified Bruce to the police, she was interviewed a few years ago, and like, how has her life been since 2008? And I mean, of course, she misses her family deeply. But one thing she's been doing with her daughter is reaching out to other families who have been affected by gun violence. Her daughter, Katrina, the daughter that answered the door, she wrote letters to different families over the years to try and comfort them as someone who had gone through the same thing. I'm sure it's a very unique experience that is hard to understand unless you've been in it. Oh, my God. And then in 2018, she helped organize a walkout at her Pasadena high school. She actually made a video where she encouraged her classmates to participate in this walkout. And she said, quote, "I've lived through it and I'm still living my life as best as I can. It's not stopping me. It's not instilling fear in me. I want that change. I don't want other families to go through what me and my family went through." End quote. Calling for some kind of gun control. That's what the walkout was for, gun control. But that, my friends, is a really awful story about this Bruce douche and him ruining fucking Christmas for a whole family. Disgusting fucking troll. The end. The end. I hope the family is doing well. I hope they're okay. I don't really have any thoughts. It's just like so gross. I mean, it's one thing to do it, but to dress up as Santa on Christmas Eve, like how fucked up. He is so fucked up. He's a different level of fucked up, this guy. He is different. Ugh, just ruining. Okay, well, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts down below. Sorry for ruining your holiday. Let me know who you want me to talk about next time I'm here. I'll be back on January 10th. Don't worry. I need breaks too for Christmas. It's hard talking about true crime and dark history all the time without feeling sad. So I need breaks too. Thank you. I know you understand. I'll be right back. BRB. Chill. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you have a wonderful holiday and I hope you're safe. Don't drink and drive. Have a good new year. Let's try and make 2022 great. I fucking roll. That's how I feel at every moment because it's just like, what is going on? Does anybody know what's going on at this point? No. Okay. Enough. I love and appreciate you so very much, and I hope to be seeing you very soon. Okay? All right. Let me know who you want me to talk about in the new year, because I need to start building up some stories. Okay? Let's go. Have a good day. Make good choices. And I'll be seeing you guys later. Bye.
Listen, Bruce Pardo, worst of the worst of the worst. There is nothing else to say about that man. There is nothing to, I don't know what else to say about that man. I know I ended with like a little bit of a Christmas episode here, but it fits because I know you're listening to Mariah Carey right now, or at least you're hearing it everywhere. She really is Christmas. Good for her. I love it for her. And I know you've got your scented candles. So it makes sense. Well, friends, thank you for hanging out with me today on this cozy fall day. Be safe out there. Make good choices. And I'll be talking to you guys later. Goodbye.